Chapter 612 Extremely Shameless. Chapter 612 Extremely Shameless. Reverie _ Such an abrupt change. Not only was it unexpected for Kan Yi, even He Yun Lan also found it unexpected. She mediated with good intentions, and actually suffered the duress of a companion. It was so sudden that she couldn't guard against it, and was easily subdued by the other. Kan Yi, this woman is deeply attached to you. Are you willing to let her die here? Cho Zifei tightened his right hand. As the blade cut open He Lan Yun's skin, blood oozed out, and made He Yun Lan let out a groan in pain, her almost shaped eyes filled with fury and regret. Kan Yi looked coldly at Seng Jian-seng and the other three, and said, "Are you guys also going to wallow in the mire with him?" Seng Jian-seng and the rest didn't respond, but stood closer to Cho Zifei and guarded him on all sides, evidently not giving Kan Yi the chance for a rescue and expressing their stance with their actions. Ha 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 ha. Hu Qing-fang laughed loudly. He truly found such a turn of events unexpected. The enemy of the enemy was a friend. He said, "Everyone, come have a seat on this young master's carriage. This young master will protect you guys." Cho Zifei and the other four were obviously overjoyed. They immediately shouted, "Get out of the way, let us through." Kan Yi looked at He Lan Yun's delicate face, his hand trembling slightly. "What are you still distracted about? Need I strip her of her clothes and blow a load first?" Cho Zifei shouted loudly. Hu Qing-fang's eyes immediately lit up as he said, "This idea's not bad, but this young master needs to get the first load. You guys line up." He was of the Wind Moon sect, and obviously wasn't embarrassed at all about doing that thing in public. Rather, it would make him feel even more excited. "You're inhuman." He Lan Yun finally shouted, her delicate face flushed. She'd rather die than to be defiled in front of the person she liked. "Base person." Qin Lian Yu reproved. She knew Cho Zifei and the others were shameless, but never expected it to reach such an unbearable degree. "He, if you're reluctant to part, why don't you change places with her?" Cho Zifei stared at Qin Lian Yu with insatiable eyes. This woman was 10 times better than He Lan Yun in both her figure and looks. He even dreamed of getting intimate with her, but fearing her strength, he only dared think about it. However, now that things had come to this, he risked it all. Under extreme emotions, people would naturally do some things out of what was proper. Dirty. Shameless. Qin Lian Yu and Zhu Xian'er both reprimanded him furiously. He Lan Yun wished to die to avoid suffering from such humiliation. Hunyo yawned, and said in a sweet voice, "You guys are so useless, still need Lord Nyo to do things. Please help." Kan Yi saluted Hunyo. He'd never asked anyone for help, but this time, he decided to make an exception. "Don't you come over." Cho Zifei immediately felt a chill all over his body, and his desire faded completely. Hunyo was too frightening, killing a spiritual infant tier elite with one punch. Although it was done with element of surprise, it still reflected her strength. Otherwise, why didn't Cho Zifei and the other four try to kill a spiritual infant tier? "You say don't come over here, and I won't." "Who do you think you are, Nyo Han?" Hunyo snorted, appearing extremely displeased. Cho Zifei hadn't spoken yet, but she already turned into lightning and charged over. Peng, 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 peng. Seng Jian-seng and the other three were instantly sent flying, unable to withstand more than one exchange against Hunyo. Cho Zifei gritted his teeth, and roared, "If I die, I'm dragging one down with me. Ha 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 ha, with a beauty keeping company, I won't be lonely on the road, either." He tightened his right hand, and was just about to kill He Lan Yun. Ding, he felt his grasp become lighter, and astonishingly discovered that this sword was actually broken by Hunyo's bite. Fuck, it was forged with a 6th tier rare metal, and although it hadn't been refined into a spirit tool, its hardness wasn't any inferior. A small monster. 1111. Hunyo raised her head, and Peng punched Cho Zifei's left eye. "Ah!" Cho Zifei screamed, and instantly staggered backwards, no longer able to control He Lan Yun, covering his eye with both hands and appearing to be in extreme pain. He Lan Yun was finally free. She directly took out a treasured sword from a spatial ring, thrusting it at Cho Zifei. Pu, the sword tip pierced Cho Zifei's chest and penetrated his heart. Cho Zifei's limbs twitched, then stopped moving. Pa. He Lan Yun spat on Cho Zifei's corpse, still feeling as if it wasn't enough to vent her hatred. Ayaya, Nyo still wanted to leave this bastard to Ling Han, and now he's killed. Hu Nyo sighed, but then was pleased again. Whatever, Ling Han wouldn't mind such a small thing. Seng Jian Seng and the others all shivered in fright. Although they didn't act, they still participated in the coercion, clarifying their stance. Now that the hostage was lost, what were they to do? You guys die on your own, or should Nyo do it? Hu Nyo crossed her arms in front of her chest, and stared coldly at the 4 people. Seng Jian Seng and the other 3 completely lost the will to fight. The strength of the 2 sides was not on the same level at all. They shouted loudly one after another, "Young master Hu, save us! Save us!" Qin Lian Yu, Can Yi, and the others were stunned. These 4 people were actually shameless enough to beg Hu Qingfang for help. This truly pushed the word shameless to new heights. Hu Qingfang also seemed to have found it unexpected. He couldn't help but laugh and applaud them. Laughable, truly laughable. But, since you guys don't have the hostage in your hands anymore, then what use are you guys to this young master? Seng Jian Seng and the other 3 were all in despair, and looked towards He Lan Yun, hoping she'd plead on their behalf. He Lan Yun's face even turned pale in anger. These 4 people had the nerve. She turned away and didn't take another glance at them. These people. I'll kill them. It's not worth dirtying Lord Nyo's hand. Can Yi brandished his sword and charged out. His fury was great, and his killing intent was burning. Seng Jian Seng's and the other 3 were no match for Can Yi to begin with, let alone now that they've lost their will to fight. In a few moves, they were all killed by Can Yi. Woo! He Lan Yun finally cried out, throwing herself into Can Yi's arms. Can Yi was obviously startled, not knowing how to react. After being startled momentarily, he finally knew to put away his saber and wrap his arms around He Lan Yun's shoulders, patting lightly as if to coax a child. Idiot! Fool! Qin Lian Yu and Zhu Xian'er remarked. On the other side, Ling Han and Duan Ming Da's battle was drawing to an end because Ling Han unleashed the demon birth sword. He was the most skilled in sword techniques, and as the treasured sword was brandished by him, 29 flashes of qi were raised, reaching the limit of qi. How could Duan Ming Da rival such might? T29 flashes of sword qi. Qin Lian Yu's beautiful eyes burned brightly as if she'd discovered a new world. Zhu Xian'er took it all in, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly on more person she needed to be careful about. Hu Qingfang's face turned pale. He never would have thought failure was still unavoidable even after enlisting the help of a peak-stage spiritual infant tier expert. He hurriedly hid in the carriage, urging the 4 beautiful women to drive it away. He didn't care whether Duan Ming Da was dead or alive, for obviously running away to protect his own life was more important. Peng, a human head swept over and landed in front of the carriage, splattering spiritual infant tear blood and emitting a powerful coercive force. Where do you think you guys are going? Ling Han stood with his sword in hand, seething with killing intent. Chapter 613, Beheading Hu Qingfang. Chapter 613, Beheading Hu Qingfang. Reverie _ Everything had first and second time, but how could there be third one as well? Hu Qingfang already escaped twice, and actually wanted to escape for a third time and then request deity transformation tier elites to come over? Ling Han obviously wouldn't tolerate it. With an imposing presence, he barged in with his sword to block the carriage. Cool. Qin Lian Yu said, infatuated. She was actually a romantic person, and obviously adored heroes the most. Ling Han was the same age as her, and not too different in tier, but his strength was much more powerful, conquering her heart in no time. Of course, she only idolized Ling Han now. It was different from falling in love. Ugly monster is thinking about Ling Han as expected. Should I kill her? Hu Nyo stroked her chin, and seriously considered the thought. Ling Han condensed sword qi and formed a pseudo-ray. The 10,000 techniques returned to 1 was prepared to be launched. Brat, you certainly are very strong, but this young master is Wind Moon Sect's young sect master. Are you sure you want to make an enemy of me? Hu Qingfang threatened. Now that he was forced to bring up his background to scare him, it was clear that he certainly was at his wit's end. Ling Han laughed grimly, and said, "The Wind Moon sect is such a shameless sect. I might as well uproot it so as to avoid the great suffering of others." "Big talk," Hu Qingfang shouted sternly. Although Ling Han's battle prowess was strong, it was only at spiritual infant tier, and the Wind Moon sect had heaven tier elites and not just one. Even deity transformation tier warriors were enough to roll over spiritual infant tier ones, let alone heaven tier warriors. "I'll kill you first for a good start." Ling Han already completed the accumulation of power, and with a swing of the sword, 29 flashes of sword chi gathered and turned into a light golden-colored stream, sweeping towards the carriage. The carriage already set up its barrier, blocking the stream, but it only lasted for an instant. Peng, the barrier actually shattered under the assault of the sword chi, and the stream continued to sweep by from the center of the carriage, instantly slashing the carriage into 2 parts. Terrifying. When the carriage activated its defense, it could form a barrier at the spiritual infant tier, which relied on origin crystals as its source of power. So as long as there were origin crystals, the barrier could be constantly maintained and instantly replenished. It was destroyed with the strike of the sword, so how terrifying would Ling Han's strike have to be for the barrier's replenishment to unable to keep up? Inside the carriage, Hu Qingfang leapt out, his face pale. This guy was too fierce. He was sitting in Wind Moon sect's ancient war chariot, which theoretically couldn't be broken through by any spiritual infant tier opponents. In the middle state, deity transformation tier cultivators could be called elites, and who among those that reached this level would easily start a war against the Wind Moon sect? For this reason, Hu Qingfang always ran wild in the ancient war chariot without scruples until the recent few days, when he knocked into 2 iron plates consecutively. Hu Niu could bite open the war chariot's defense, and Ling Han was even more kick-ass, slicing the carriage in 2 with a sword strike. You, don't come over." Hu Qingfang's greatest trump card was lost, and he was finally thrown into a panic, completely losing composure. "Then scream. See if anyone will come save you if you scream your throat out," Ling Han said indifferently. "Ha ha ha ha." Hu Niu began to laugh loudly, while Zhu Xian laughed lightly with her mouth covered. Qin Lian Yu thought shortly, then began to laugh as well. Her idol told a joke, so whether it was funny or not, she'd just laugh first. "Go." Hu Qingfang pushed the 4 beautiful women while he turned tail and ran. What a joke of a man. With a flash, Ling Han turned into a flash of lightning and caught up to Hu Qingfang. With a strike of the sword, Pu, Hu Qingfang's head soared into the sky, blood gushing violently from the severed neck. "Young sect master," the 4 beautiful women cried out, their faces pale. "Jackals of the same tribe." Ling Han turned around and swung the sword again, killing the 4 beautiful women as well. In the Wind Moon sect, men harvested origin yin, and women harvested origin yang. The higher their tier, the more people they'd harmed to get there, so none of them needed to be spared. "Ah, you actually did it." Qin Lian Yu looked at Hu Qingfang's corpse, and sighed. Wind Moon sect's sect master might have countless wives and concubines, but he only has one son, whom he spoiled extremely. "You killed him, which means making an enemy of the Wind Moon sect." Ling Han looked towards her, and said, "Then should I silence you too?" No need. Qin Lian Yu waved her hand hurriedly. "Isn't there still a Yang Ying Yun who slipped through the net? You don't need to silence me." This woman had quite the self-amusing spirit. Ling Han shook his head, and walked over to store the spatial rings that Hu Qingfang and Duan Ming Da dropped. At a glance, these 2 people were really quite rich, especially Hu Qingfang, who actually had a 7th-tier rare metal in his spatial ring. Presumably, when he advanced into the spiritual infant tier, it would be used to forge a weapon for him. Nice timing. I've only got 6 arrows remaining, and though this piece of rare metal isn't too large, forging 5 arrows shouldn't be a problem. Ling Han walked back, and said, "Where are you 2 going?" These 2 people obviously meant Qin Lian Yu and He Lan Yun. "You guys are going to the Restore Heaven Academy, and I'm also going there, so of course we're going together," Qin Lian Yu immediately said. He Lan Yun glanced at Kan Yi, and said, "I'll also go with you guys." Kan Yi was somewhat flushed, and a gentle look flashed across his eyes. It seemed like the disaster earlier opened up the film that separated the 2, having positive effects. Ling Han laughed loudly, and conveniently took out a handful of medicinal pills from the Black Tower, handing it over to He Yun Lan. He then said, "Come, come, come, this is a greeting gift." He Yun Lan instantly blushed, but still reached out to retrieve the medicinal pills, glancing at Can Yi again and feeling sweet in her heart. She felt the humiliation she'd suffered earlier all turned into mist. Qin Lian Yu also reached out her slim hand, and said, "Do I have any?" This woman was so brazen. Ling Han sneered, and said, "No." "Stingy." Qin Lian Yu muttered. Ling Han ignored her, and said, "Let's go. When the Almighty of Wind Moon sect are drawn over, we'll be in some serious trouble." Everyone nodded. This was a forest, anyway. With wild beasts running rampant, it could naturally destroy all evidences such as corpse for them. Without Hu Qingfang's threat hanging over them, they walked back on the main streets. After all, the mountain and forest landscape were complex, and would affect their speed. "Brother Ling, have you got any interest in going to a certain place?" Qin Lian Yu approached to strike up a conversation. "No." Ling Han declined directly. "You haven't even listened to me saying what that place is." Qin Lian Yu was somewhat aggrieved. For the first time, she doubted her own charisma, being rejected by Ling Han so laconically. "Not interested in any place," Ling Han said. "It's a medicinal valley." Qin Lian Yu spoke out. Ling Han was slightly surprised. A medicinal valley? For him who was the alchemy emperor, a medicinal valley was still quite attractive, and in his hands, the effects of medicinal ingredients could be maximized. Now that his tier was higher and higher, the more he needed higher-level medicinal ingredients. He asked, "What level's the medicinal valley?" Chapter 614, Yi Rong. Chapter 614, Yi Rong. Reverie _ If it were a flower blossom tier or spiritual pedestal tier medicinal valley, Ling Han would have no interest in it, since he would soon cross the flower blossom tier and advance into the spiritual infant tier. "I'm also unclear. The valley entrance had a spiritual infant tier beast keeping watch over it, so I didn't dare to go deep. However, at the location of the valley entrance, I also discovered a spirit fruit tree," Qin Lian Yu said. "It was also because of this medicinal valley that I bumped into Hu Qingfang." "This," Ling Han muttered. By valley entrance, there was already a 7th-tier spirit fruit tree, so there might be higher spiritual medicines inside the valley. Even if it were only 7th-tier spirit medicines, that was also considerably useful. "Brother Ling, are you moved?" Qin Lian Yu said smilingly. "Are you smug?" Ling Han said. "Follow me." Qin Lian Yu didn't take the chance to make sarcastic remarks, and led the way instead, talking about how she discovered the medicinal valley. Since there was still half a year before the Restore Heaven Academy officially opened, she wasn't in a rush, and wandered about, also seeking some luck for herself. She really was lucky in that when she was tracking a large white rabbit, she came to this medicinal valley, but there roamed a spiritual infant tier beast, which scared her. As she was thinking of finding people to break in together, she unexpectedly encountered Hu Qingfang and was constantly chased by him, being entangled for over half a month. Thus, they were still somewhat far from the medicinal valley. Qin Lian Yu obviously took many roundabout ways at the time, but it wasn't necessary for them. They only needed to walk in a straight line, so it would only a journey of about 5 days. After one day, they arrived in a small town, and stopped to rest for the night. Lady Qin. The first thing in the morning, when they were about to set out, a young man rushed over. He looked 26 to 27, and was already in the peak stage of the flower blossom tier. His strength was quite extraordinary. He also looked impressive, and wore cyan clothes all over his body, drawing out the contours of his well-built physique. His hair was dark, and his skin sparkling and translucent as if it could emit light, smoother than many women's. "Yi Rong." Qin Lian Yu revealed an astounded expression, and said, "Why are you here? I heard Lady Qin was entangled by that evil crook, Hu Qingfang, and immediately rushed over." Not bad, looks like I still came in time." The man in cyan clothing let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted, with evident affection in his gaze. Qin Lian Yu pretended not to see it, and said, "This is Flying Star Sect's sect master's cherished disciple, Yi Rong, Brother Yi." Brother Yi's martial arts talent is extremely high, and has obtained direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy. Yi Rong immediately revealed a lofty look, with his hands behind his back, appearing insufferably arrogant. Being able to obtain a direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy explained that his martial arts talent was certainly extremely kick-ass. Such a genius was obviously proud of his own talent, and regarded many things as beneath him. Being courteous to Qin Lian Yu was obviously because he liked this girl, and in front of others, he obviously revealed the loftiness that geniuses usually had. Things of a kind came together, and a genius like him obviously wouldn't stoop down to associating with Ling Han and the others. Ling Han simply smiled, and said, "So it's Brother Yi." Seeing Ling Han greet him, Kan Yi, Zhu Xian and He Lan Yun also called out one after another. Hu Niu, however, completed ignored him. It wasn't worth her time to acknowledge such a self-important guy. Yi Rong took everyone's greetings as something obvious. Being able to obtain a direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy already sufficiently confirmed his talents, and was his reason for arrogance. He completely considered everyone beneath him, and just looked at Qin Lian Yu, and said, "Lady Qin, it's better that I escort you to the Restore Heaven Academy." Qin Lian Yu was displeased, and said, "Brother Yi, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Hehe, I'm only worried for you." Yi Rong didn't take it as uncongenial. However, if someone else said this, he would definitely be furious and possibly even kill them directly. How could an exceptional genius be slighted? Qin Lian Yu looked at Ling Han with an inquiring gaze. They were going to the medicinal valley, and with one more person, the treasured medicines they obtained would obviously be split with one more person. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Since Brother Yi's so sincere, let's go together." Yi Rong couldn't help but glance at Ling Han, and felt that this person knew the cues, knowing that he was pursuing Qin Lian Yu, and intentionally assisted him. Yes, it wouldn't hurt to guide him a little in the future. He opened his mouth arrogantly, and said, "You're all going to the Restore Heaven Academy?" After receiving everyone's affirmation, he suppressed a laugh, and said, "I'm a direct entry disciple anyhow, and have certain special rights. In the future, when you guys go to the academy to participate in the exam, I'll say some good things to assist you guys." "Hehe, then thank you," Ling Han said, not caring at all. He'd seen many conceited people, and didn't care at all. Zhu Xian, Qin Lian Yu, and Yun He Lan laughed lightly with their mouths covered. If this guy saw Ling Han's battle prowess, he probably wouldn't say assist even if he were beaten to death. How embarrassing. With Yi Rong, the 7 people continued to advance. Yi Rong certainly had powerful backing. Flying Star Sect was a super sect no inferior to the Wind Moon Sect, and was only beneath the Absolute Saber Sect, the Heaven's Sword Sect, and other such ancient sects. Yi Rong was Flying Star Sect's Sect Master's 7th disciple, and one of the most exceptional 3, being able to obtain direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy proved so. He was now only 29 years old, but looked 26 or 27. That was because he advanced into the Flower Blossom tier early, and the changes in facial appearance slowed. He was at the peak stage of the Flower Blossom tier with 16 stars battle prowess extremely outstanding. On the way, he was the only one that spoke, bragging about his combat scores, like how he once beheaded some elite or genius, as if nobody could beat him. However, everyone paid no attention to him, which made him unable to continue, appearing extremely awkward. In the night after 4 days, they passed by a village. As it wasn't far from the medicinal valley, they wanted to rush there in one go, and didn't think to stop here. However, Ling Han suddenly stopped. "What's the matter?" Zhu Xian'o asked. Yi Rong was very dissatisfied. If it weren't for the sake of Qin Lian Yu, he wouldn't pull these people along at all. But now, Ling Han actually dared to hold him back. It just became night, so why are there no lights in this village? Ling Han asked. "Maybe they sleep early," Yi Rong said thoughtlessly, appearing extremely discontent. A mere mortal village, even if anything happened, would it even be worth taking it seriously? The typical superior's mentality. Ling Han ignored him and turned to walk towards the village. Yi Rong trembled in anger. He dared to ignore him. How hateful. He said, "Ignore him, let's." Before he said the word go, the others already followed Ling Han, making him almost faint from anger. Were all these people bewitched? Chapter 6:15, Corpse Traces. Chapter 6:15, Corpse Traces. Reverie _ Ling Han entered the village. It was like a graveyard, deathly silent, no movement could be heard. "It's too quiet," Qin Lianyu said, and kept looking at the places where the moonlight failed to reach as if a monster would suddenly jump out from the dark and forbidding place. "No breathing, and no heartbeat," Zhu Xian said seriously. For experts like them, breathing and heartbeat could still be heard even across several hundred meters and several walls. It wasn't a problem at all. But now, there was none of these sounds, and there wasn't even a tiny bit of the barking of dogs and the clucking of chickens. It was as if this village was already abandoned for countless years, but it could be clearly seen that hanging from some people's houses were corncobs and red peppers, which represented there were still people living in this village not long ago, maybe even the previous day. Strange. Everyone discovered something was amiss. Yi Rong also walked over, and couldn't help but sneer as he said, "It's only a mortal's village, what's there to make a fuss about?" No one paid attention to him. On the contrary, everyone's curiosity was piqued. Ling Han pushed open a door and walked in. The house's furniture was all there, several dishes were even placed on the table, but now, they were obviously cold. Smelling them, they hadn't gone rancid yet. What happened suddenly that led to the entire village's death? Even the livestock was no more. After searching the room, Ling Han came to another room, but it was much more chaotic here, with obvious signs of battle. There was fresh blood on the walls and the floor, making for a ghastly sight. A conflict happened, but the scale wasn't large, should be just a dispute between mortals, Qin Lianyu inferred. But what exactly happened that actually involved the entire village, and even livestock? This was puzzling. Even if two people fought, it would be impossible to involve the entire village, let alone making the chickens and dogs suffer. Ling Han walked into the inner chambers, and suddenly, he halted in his steps. Hong, a black shadow suddenly scuttled out and pounced on Ling Han. It spread its arms as if to hug him, but its mouth was open wide, revealing ghastly white teeth, directly aiming for Ling Han's throat. A mere mortal even dares to assault people? Yi Rong said in disdain. He flicked his finger on the right hand, and that figure instantly fell down backwards. Traces of blood burst from its forehead. Ling Han was astounded, and with a shake of the right hand, origin power turned into flames, lightening up the surroundings. That certainly was a villager with a bloody hole on its forehead, but the blood didn't splatter everywhere. It was just a bloody hole, oozing out traces of black-colored blood. "What's there to look at?" Yi Rong said, dissatisfied. The medicinal valley was nearby, so why waste time here? "This is a corpse soldier." Ling Han frowned. This person had already died for a long time, so the blood was all congealed. If corpse soldiers weren't tempered, they would be left with the most primitive instincts. Slaughtering and devouring the flesh of living creatures. Evidently, the village's livestock was all eaten by the villagers that turned into corpse soldiers, and most of them should have entered the mountains and forest to continue searching for food. This one remained in ambush in the room, and was just a corpse if it wasn't disturbed, but once it smelled the presence of living creatures, it began to move. The mystery was solved, and everyone let out a sigh of relief. The unknown was the most terrifying, and now that they knew what they were going to face, they felt relieved. Strange. Why are there corpse soldiers here? Could it be Thousand Corpse Sect's doing? Ling Han muttered. Some time ago, the Thousand Corpse Sect was quite high profile, besieging Million Treasures City with the fourth killing formation. If it were for Feng Poyun's appearance, Million Treasures City would most likely have fallen into the hands of the Thousand Corpse Sect. He had a feeling that Thousand Corpse Sect, which acted low-key constantly, would rise entirely and abruptly in this lifetime. This was both the best age and the worst age for it. Nothing more than low-level corpse soldiers. Yi Rong actually recognized corpse soldiers, and didn't just know how to be arrogant. Ling Han searched the entire village. There was a total of 5 corpse soldiers, and what surprised him was that there were 2 that were much stronger than others. They probably devoured other corpse soldiers and obtained an increase in power. At the Fallen Moon Gorge, Ling Han stopped the Thousand Corpse Sect schemes once. They wanted to use medicinal pills to turn everyone in the desolate north into corpse soldiers, which would start devouring each other to foster a corpse king. Could the Thousand Corpse sect act so reckless now even in the Middle State? In terms of population, the Middle State had enough to foster many corpse kings, but the problem was that would Absolute Saber sect, Heaven's Sword sect, and other such superforces let the Thousand Corpse sect act so recklessly? This world was bound for turmoil. They set out again and passed by several small villages, discovering that everyone there had turned into corpse soldiers. In this situation, not only was Ling Han shocked, even Qin Lian Yu and Yi Rong became solemn. What was the Thousand Corpse sect trying to do? They didn't find people of the Thousand Corpse sect, because they were already in the depths of the mountains and forests. They soon arrived at a valley under Qin Lian Yu's guidance. Extremely remote, the entrance was blocked by a firmament tree, and if one didn't climb up intentionally, one definitely couldn't possibly discover it. After the entrance, there was a long valley path, very tight and narrow, but after walking over 30 meters, it became broader and broader. Above their heads, layers of protruding rocks concealed them. Even if flying by, one would only think this was a solid mountainous region, so how could one possibly know that there was actually a hole underneath? Rays of light shone down through a mysterious refraction, and although it wasn't very bright, it was enough for people to see things. After walking a while, the mountain valley finally showed itself. As expected, at the valley's entrance was a 7th-tier spirit tree. It was a peach tree that produced lots of glowing red fruits, each one the size of a bowl rim, and the alluring fragrance could be smelled from far away. Everyone's fingers itched, wishing to immediately pluck off a fruit for a taste. Hunyou's saliva almost dripped down onto the ground. However, no one dared to act recklessly, because at the valley entrance was a crimson-red mountain leopard, with a total of 9 fist-sized vein-like patterns on its back. Grey-patterned leopard, a spiritual infant tier beast, the vein-like patterns on its back represented which layer it was at. 9th-layer spiritual infant tier beasts were usually much stronger than normal 9th-layer spiritual infant tier martial artists because beasts were thick-skinned, and their claws and fangs were equivalent to rare metals of the same tier, surpassing same-level martial artists in both destructive power and defensive power. Why's it a 9th-layer spiritual infant tier beast? Yi Rong frowned. Although he believed that it was hard to find opponents in the same tier, it was game over when he'd encountered a spiritual infant tier opponent, let alone this 9th-layer spiritual infant tier beast. Although the spirit fruits were before them, they could only look. Ling Han was overjoyed. If this peach tree could be stored into the Black Tower, then there would be a steady flow of 7th-tier spirit peaches to eat. Chapter 616, Retrieving Peaches. Chapter 616, Retrieving Peaches. Reverie _ What do we do? With a 9th-layer spiritual infant tier beast here, it's impossible to harvest the spirit peaches. Yi Rong began to worry all on his own. As he saw it, Chu Hao and the others were just impediments, and there were no experts other than him to rely on. Otherwise, why was he the only one that received direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy among them? This was equivalent to having the word expert printed on his face, and those who didn't receive the qualifications were obviously all dregs. Did experts need the opinions of duffers? No way. He thought for a while, and said, I'll lure away that grey-patterned leopard, and you guys pluck the spirit peaches. Pluck as many as possible, and in a while, we'll converge at that small village 35 kilometers out. Ling Han was indifferent to it. With a smile, he said, then thanks for the trouble, Brother Yi. Yi Rong looked as if it was only natural, and felt somewhat out of sorts. These people would be able to receive a share of the spirit peaches without expending any effort. If it weren't for the sake of Qin Lian Yu, he truly wanted to chase the other people away. Everyone rose up and hid between the cliffs and precipices, while Yi Rong charged out and picked up a stone, enveloping it with origin power. As his martial intent surged, the stone seemed to turn into a spirit tool, emitting an astounding brilliance. He shouted loudly and flung out the rock, and shio, a ray of light flew towards the grey-patterned leopard. With a pa, the rock smashed against the grey-patterned leopard's head. If this were a martial artist that was also at the spiritual infant tier, their head would definitely explode if their origin power wasn't activated. The grey-patterned leopard, however, was a beast that was born thick-skinned, and while attacks by same-tier martial artists and beasts were something it didn't dare to take head-on, a flower blossom tier opponent's attacks smashing its body were nothing to it. It shook its head slightly, then propped itself up on all fours limbs, peering left and right, as if to search for the amateur that assaulted it. Xiao, Yi Rong flung another rock. This time, the grey-patterned leopard didn't take it on as roughly, and waved its claws to shatter the flying rock. Fury in its eyes, it suddenly exerted power with its four limbs, dashing towards Yi Rong at a shockingly fast speed. Yi Rong hurriedly took to his heels. No matter how confident he was, he wouldn't dare fight against a peak-stage spiritual infant-tier beast. He ran a few steps and turned to look, then was almost frightened out of his wits. The grey-patterned leopard's speed was too fast, far surpassing what was normal at the spiritual infant tier, and it rapidly closed the gap between him. Damn it, he cursed, and hurriedly took out a spirit talisman from a spatial ring with a pained look, yet unhesitatingly stuck it on his body. Instantly, a flash of white light enveloped him, and his speed skyrocketed. This was a divine travel talisman bestowed to him by his master. He had a total of 3 that could be used to save his life, but now he used one for a few spirit peaches, truly a great loss. Even if 10 spirit peaches were harvested and all given to him, he would still have suffered a great loss. Could it be compared to a life-saving treasure? As matters stood, he could only take to his heels. Ling Han and the others laughed as they watched. If this guy hadn't talked and acted on his own, with Ling Han and Hu Niu present, why would have there been a need to go through such great troubles? To say the least, even if Ling Han couldn't beat that grey-patterned leopard, it would definitely be safer and more efficient for Hu Niu to draw it away. Hu Niu drooled as she said, "What a pity, Niu wanted to eat roasted leopard legs." Well, Yi Rong not only didn't succeed in doing a favor, but also made Hu Niu bear a grudge against him. Qin Lian Yu wanted to charge out, but Ling Han grabbed her by the wrist, not letting her do as she pleased. "What are you doing? Are you trying to harass this lady?" Ling Han rolled his eyes as he said, "What are you trying to do?" "Of course, plucking the peaches." Qin Lian Yu looked at him like at an idiot, feeling that her idol was extremely strong, but his brain didn't seem to be function that well. Couldn't he tell such a simple thing? "Don't pluck." Ling Han shook his head and began to dig it up by the roots. Qin Lian Yu gasped in astonishment. This guy was truly Blackheart, not only wanting to eat the peaches, but also digging the tree up by the root. She immediately said, "This spirit tree can only grow in certain places. Even if you dig it up, it can't survive elsewhere." "Who said so?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and dug even faster. If he weren't afraid of harming this spirit tree, he'd shovel it up in one go. His divine sense was limited, and wouldn't be able to envelop the entire peach tree, so if he dug too deep, then it wouldn't be able to be stored in the Black Tower. "Never seen anyone like you." Qin Lian Yu stared in astonishment. This guy was truly a robber. "Of course not, I'm the one and only." Ling Han laughed loudly. Niu's Ling Han is the one and only. Hu Niu also felt self-satisfied. One adult and one child, both were puffed up. Qin Lian Yu ridiculed them inwardly, but she had to admit that these two were both freaks at an abnormal level, far surpassing the level of geniuses. In the middle state, only a few rumored freaks could compare. For example, Heaven's Sword Sect's Yarrow Hui Yu, Absolute Saber Sect's Small Saber King, Cloud Phoenix Sect's Dongling and Azure Thunder Sect's Ya Tian. Ling Han soon dug up the entire peach tree, and Xiao, with a flash, he stored it into the Black Tower. "Ah." Qin Lian Yu was startled. "How big is your spatial ring for it to store such a large spirit tree?" The fruit tree was more than 300 meters tall, and the root system spread out was also that long. There were pitifully few spatial spirit tools in the world that could contain such dimensions. Zhu Xian and Kenyi smiled faintly. If this girl entered the Black Tower and saw the vast space inside, she'd probably cry out for her mother. "Let's enter the valley and have a look." Since this was a medicinal valley, there was definitely more spirit medicine inside. Ling Han wanted to enrich the amount of spirit medicine inside the Black Tower. "Be careful. I once surveyed it at an elevated height before. Although it's not lacking spirit medicine inside, there are even more high-level beasts." Qin Lian Yu warned. Ling Han nodded. However, he was also puzzled, and said, "The stronger the beast, the more it likes to live alone, so why'd it run into the mountain valley?" This mountain valley wasn't that large, and might not be enough for the grey-patterned leopard's territory alone, not to mention that there were other beasts inside. Hong, long, long, they hadn't moved yet when heard a loud bang as if 10,000 beasts galloping from within the valley, and the ground trembled fiercely. Everyone looked towards the valley, and saw a plume dust as a bunch of beasts charged out. *T, we haven't even entered, so why are they charging out? These beasts varied in type. There were fierce tigers with wings, great snakes with 4 legs, and azure vultures without feathers but with scales, but each one was extremely powerful. The deity transformation tier. In front of these beasts was actually a large white rabbit the height of half a man, holding a purple carrot in its mouth. A rabbit on the run ran the fastest. Hu! Ang! Ayo! All the beasts roared loudly, looking at the large white rabbit with eyes filled with fury. These beasts are chasing that rabbit. We're caught in the crossfire. Run! Chapter 617 Uncle Rabbit. Chapter 617 Uncle Rabbit. Reverie _ Ling Han and the others all cried out in dismay. They were innocent, and were brought a disaster by a large white rabbit. Go, go, go. They hurriedly broke into a run. This wasn't something they could resist. Any beast there could take care of them and give them great trouble. They couldn't care about exposing their tracks, and they flew in the sky as fast as they could. Oh my, that damned rabbit actually followed us. Ling Han turned to look, and saw that when the large white rabbit saw them, it actually ran behind them. This damned rabbit's speed was truly fast. A push of its feet was over 30 meters, and it rapidly closed the gap between them. This damned rabbit. Everyone gritted their teeth. It not only implicated them, but actually continued to bring disaster to them. What grievances did it have with them? This rabbit seems to be the one that drew me into the mountain valley, Qin Lian Yu suddenly said. This rabbit's a habitual thief. It really screwed us over. But, we certainly stole the things, so it's not unjust treatment. Ling Han grabbed everyone with origin power and carried out the fairy daemon step, suddenly speeding up. Giddy up, giddy up. Hu Niu was mischievous, and rode on Ling Han's shoulders, shouting excitedly. In her dictionary, there was never the word fear. Pu, pu, pu. That large white rabbit also pushed off into the air and rose into the sky. Pushing off its feet, the speed it tread on air was also surprisingly fast, not the slightest bit inferior to Ling Han using the demon fairy step and activating the thunderclap 9th heaven. It was no wonder, without such a fast speed, how would it dare enter the medicinal valley and steal under the eyes of so many deity transformation tier beasts? Qin Lian Yu couldn't help but shout, "Damn rabbit, you've got yourself into big trouble." Back then, it was the rabbit that drew her here to discover this medicinal valley, but now, it was also because of this damned rabbit that they were being hunted down by deity transformation tier beasts. Rabbit, so fat. Hu Niu turned her head, and instantly drooled. Niu wants to eat rabbit meat. Ah! Pa, you want to eat Uncle Rabbit's meat? You're still 100 millennia and 8,000 years too young. This large white rabbit grabbed the carrot that it was holding in its mouth with its small claws so that it could speak to mock Hu Niu. Pu. Everyone instantly stuck their tongues out simultaneously. This damned rabbit actually knew how to talk. After beasts advanced into the flower blossom tier, their intelligence developed, and they possessed intelligence no inferior to humans. However, speaking like humans, that was too dreamlike. What? Seeing Uncle Rabbit talk, you guys all got scared? Haha, Uncle Rabbit's formidable as expected. The large white rabbit was self-satisfied, and very much like a ruffian. Damned rabbit, you did it on purpose, right? Ling Han said. Not running elsewhere, but drawing pursuers over to us. Hee, everyone running together is livelier. The large white rabbit didn't deny at all. Qin Lian Yu was even more furious, crying out, "Damn rabbit, just you wait. If she weren't grabbed by Ling Han's large hand made of origin power, she'd definitely go fight this lowly rabbit." Rabbit meat seems really delicious. Hu Niu's eyes lit up, staring at the large white rabbit. Come, Uncle Rabbit's here, bring it on. Whoever's scared, whoever is the B*TCH. The large white rabbit was very rascally, and wiggled his tiny tail, appearing base to the bone. Nyo's rabbit meat. Nyo was excited, and suddenly charged over. Her speed was extremely fast, and in a flash, she rode on the back of the large white rabbit. This large white rabbit was the height of half a man, while Nyo was also the height of half a man, one person and one rabbit same in body size. One was white all over, with two eyes like rubies, while the other was white jade and delicately sculpted, extremely cute. From appearances alone, they were awfully cute, but in reality, Nyo opened her mouth, biting down on the large white rabbit's tail. It was so painful that this lowly rabbit instantly trembled all over, its figure unimaginably sped up by one fold, Xiao, rocketing out and swiftly surpassing Ling Han. Ah, it screamed. You born in the year of the dog or something? It hurt like hell for your Uncle Rabbit. Nyo was also depressed. Her teeth could be said to be successful in every endeavor, but she actually didn't manage to bite off this lowly rabbit's tail, truly inconceivable. Her viciousness was unleashed, and she bit on the rabbit's tail without letting go, shaking her head constantly and trying to forcibly pull it off. The large white rabbit screamed constantly and ran even faster. Ling Han also sped up in a rush, but could only stare blankly as one person and one rabbit disappeared before him. After all, he hadn't cultivated the thunderclap ninth heaven to great mastery, and also brought a group of people. Fortunately, the pursuing beasts were falling more and more behind them, soon disappearing in the distance. Ling Han traveled forward a while longer, and saw that the large white rabbit had already stopped running, doing its best to shake off Nyo. However, Nyo just bit on the tail. No matter how this lowly rabbit shook, she just wouldn't let go. Let go. Let go. The large white rabbit jumped in a rush. Uncle Rabbit's tail is short to begin with, so if it's bitten off, how would Uncle Rabbit have the face to see others in the future? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, Base Rabbit, hand over the dragon blood tyrant ginseng, and I'll give you a hand. The large white rabbit was startled, and stopped its movements, looking towards Ling Han, and said, You actually recognize this spurt ginseng? Ah. It immediately screamed again as Nyo began to grind her teeth. Human, hurry up and make this little girl loosen her bite, your Uncle Rabbit's about to die. The large white rabbit continued to scream. The ginseng. Ling Han reached out his hand. The large white rabbit revealed a pained look. He spent tremendous effort to steal this from the medicinal valley, and had only licked it a few times, but now it was being told to hand it over. However, its tail was in so much pain from being bitten, and this strange little girl gave it an indescribable feeling of deterrence, making it not dare to unleash an ultimate attack, as otherwise, there'd be an unimaginable calamity. It could only cup its two small front claws, throwing the ginseng at Ling Han. Ling Han received it and examined it momentarily, seeing that the ginseng's roots were still present and its life force still very sufficient. He laughed loudly and stored the ginseng into the Black Tower. Now that was good. 1 year later, they'd be able to eat large amounts of treasured ginseng. This was dragon blood tyrant ginseng. According to the legends, it was 1,000-year-old ginseng soaked in a dragon's blood, becoming a deviant treasured medicine. Dragon blood was extremely overbearing. For this ginseng not to die soaking in dragon blood and absorb its essence, the medicinal effects were obviously extremely amazing. However, this definitely wasn't the first-generation dragon blood tyrant ginseng, so its effects were obviously somewhat worse, but it was still a gem amongst 9th-tier treasured medicine. Even heaven-tier elites would be moved. Plant it, and in 1 year, it could be reaped like carrots. Nyo, let go. This lowly rabbit hasn't been cooked thoroughly, it's not delicious, Ling Han said with a smile. Nyo finally relaxed her bite, then thought shortly, and said, This rabbit's delicious, even uncooked, it's delicious. She targeted the large white rabbit again, drooling once again. Chapter 618, Nyo wants to eat rabbit meat. Chapter 618, Nyo wants to eat rabbit meat. Reverie _ The fur all over the large white rabbit's body bristled in fright, and its two hind legs began to quiver, wanting to hop away. However, it was unwilling to after some consideration. The dragon blood tyrant ginseng was seized by this human youngster in front of it. It went through great efforts, going through countless checkpoints, before scooping out this ginseng. Human, Why don't everyone eat ginseng soup? Uncle Rabbit will go catch an azure pheasant. Making a black-bone chicken ginseng sole will definitely be tonic. This rabbit immediately emulated Hunyo, drooling all over the ground. Make rabbit meat ginseng soup. Hunyo immediately raised her hand. Fuck your uncle. The large white rabbit almost kicked Hunyo, but trembled in fear, not daring to act recklessly in the end. Linghan shook his head and said, that ginseng can't be eaten temporarily, we still need to wait 1 more year. I promise you, you give me 1 stalk now, and 1 year later, I'll return 2 stalks to you. How about it? The large white rabbit involuntarily opened its bright red eyes, and said, human boy, you're talking too big. You think Uncle Rabbit was amused growing up, believing in such lies? The spirit medicine that Uncle Rabbit's eaten are more than the rice you've eaten. Ruffian rabbit. Linghan pointed the middle finger at it. Anyway, that's all I have to say whether you believe it or not. He had the treasured ginseng, didn't he? Believe it, Uncle Rabbit obviously believes it. The large white rabbit hurriedly nodded. Ah, it suddenly screamed again. This girl's biting Uncle Rabbit again. Hunyo, Linghan said. Hunyo finally unwillingly let go of the large white rabbit's leg, and said, this rabbit's delicious, Nyo wants to eat rabbit meat. She bawled and behaved like a spoiled child. Hunyo, cut it out. Linghan picked up Hunyo, and couldn't help but click his tongue in surprise. Although Hunyo loved to eat, she'd never been so ravenous. He took out a piece of dried meat and handed it to Hunyo, letting her eat it first. Hunyo gnawed on it unhappily, her eyes still staring at the large white rabbit, making the rabbit tuck its tail between its legs. However, its tail was really too short, and clutching it was very difficult. Since the pursuing beasts have retreated, let's eat something first to recover from the fright, Linghan said. He took out a pot, then put in the ingredients inside the black tower. He specially pulled out a few 1,000-year-old ginsengs. However, even inside the black tower, ginseng could only grow to 1,000 years old, and could not progress further, because their seeds were of the ordinary kind, and 1,000 years was the limit. Thus, Linghan didn't mind taking it out to share with everyone, or else it would just rot in the mud. 1,000-year purple ginseng, 1,000-year jade ginseng, 1,000-year yellow ginseng. Qin Lian Yu looked at them one by one, her eyes showing surprise. Regarding these ginseng kinds, they were just 4th-tier and 5th-tier spirit medicine, but their age was very impressive. 1,000 years of age was enough to raise their social status by another tier. The key was that Linghan now took it out to boil soup. How extravagant was this? She'd seen tycoons, but to this degree, there was definitely no second one. Even shattering void tears couldn't do it. After all, there were only so many 1,000-year-old spirit ginsengs. There was an upper limit. However, Zhu Xian'er and Ken Yi were without a shred of surprise, as if it were a common occurrence. Could they possibly eat such extravagant meals often? The large white rabbit was also surprised. It had stolen a lot of spirit medicine, but the offerings were all 1,000-year-old treasured medicine. Even it felt its heart palpitate. Ah! But it immediately screamed again. It turned out Hunyo couldn't help but bite it again. Linghan boiled the food, and asked out of curiosity, Ruffian rabbit, you're a spiritual infant tier expert, so how come you're such a pushover? This made him think of Helian Zun Shui. He had no clue where this sea girl ran off to, and after a while, he actually missed her a bit. Uncle Rabbit won't bother arguing with a kid. The large white rabbit said proudly, but seeing Hunyo bare her baleful white teeth again, it hurriedly jumped behind Linghan in fright. Rabbit, play with Nyo. Let's play eagle and chicken. Nyo's the eagle, and if you're caught by Nyo, Nyo will eat you. She shifted her body, and like a lightning flash, she tried to grab the large white rabbit. Fuck, still trying to eat Uncle Rabbit. You're freaking uncle. The large white rabbit took to its heels. One person and one rabbit circled around the open fire. One was fast, and the other wasn't slow, either. Neither succeeded at catching shaking off the other, coming to a draw. Linghan took things leisurely, boiling the soup undistractedly. You're not going to intervene? Qin Lian Yu couldn't help but speak up. I don't need to, she'll stop to eat on her own when she's messed around enough, Linghan said indifferently. This, how irresponsible. No wonder Hu Niu was taught to be so fierce. As expected, when the iron pot emitted an alluring fragrant smell, Hu Niu immediately stopped and sat up properly, but she couldn't help looking on with eager eyes, and began to drool. Give Uncle Rabbit the eagle's butt. The large white rabbit also sat down, but far away from Hu Niu. Rabbits eat meat? Ling Han asked with a laugh. These lowly eagles have eaten countless of Uncle Rabbit's ancestors and descendants. Uncle Rabbit's getting revenge, the large white rabbit said righteously. Bull crap, clearly just ravening for it. Ling Han scooped out the eagle's butt, and picked out a ginseng, then fetched some soup, handing it over to the large white rabbit. This eagle was the one killed not long ago, at the flower blossom tier level, and was greatly tonic for them. Unfortunately, it wasn't a king amongst beasts. Everyone received their portion of ginseng soup one by one, and began eating one after another. The eagle meat was juicy, and the essence within the treasured ginseng was also all squeezed into the broth. It was both delicious and tonic. Everyone glowed all over as they ate, with flashes of vein-like patterns rising. When Ling Han was cooking, he fused in the techniques of pill refinement, and extracted all the essence within the treasured ginseng, interweaving it with heaven and earth, so it was obviously awfully tonic. After drinking the soup, Ling Han also took out a spirit peach, one for each person they wouldn't be able to digest anymore. Everyone sat in meditation to refine the benefits they ingested. After a while, the essence would naturally run off. Ling Han, Hu Niu, and the large white rabbit ate the most. Ling Han and Hu Niu had enormous appetites to start with. As for the large white rabbit, first, it was high in tier, and second, it was also somewhat of a freak, eating no less than Ling Han and Hu Niu. It drank bowl after bowl, not knowing how to hold back at all. After a long while, everyone finished and stood up one after another. They all revealed a satisfied look after benefiting a great deal. But Yi Rong should have waited for a long while now. This somewhat rude. He shouldn't mind. Hee. Everyone had no positive feelings for Yi Rong, and obviously wouldn't mind what he thought. Let's go. They obviously didn't dare to go to the medicinal valley again. Inside were a nobility of deity transformation tier beasts. The waters were deep, and charging in recklessly would end terribly. They made their way to the appointed location. Although they didn't like Yi Rong, they'd already agreed, and weren't ones to go back on their word. Ling Han began to ask the ruffian rabbit about the background of the medicinal valley. Chapter 619 Origins of the Medicinal Valley. Chapter 619 Origins of the Medicinal Valley. Reverie _ What's the mountain valley's background? Why are there so many deity transformation tier beasts? Ling Han was curious. One deity transformation tier beast could rule a mountain region alone, so many of them living together was completely unreasonable. The large white rabbit said, "That's obvious. There's a heavens tier eagle king, purple jade azure eagly relic species, a king amongst kings reigning over all beasts there." Ling Han sighed. Placed in the previous life, this eagle king was definitely an invincible existence, not as simple as just being a king amongst beasts, but a king amongst kings, on par with Sword Emperor and Heavenly Divine Phoenix Maiden. In this life, such a beast king had the chance to progress one more step, advancing into the shattering void tier. If it really crossed this step, then it would truly be the world's most powerful being, almost without an equal. "You're rather daring, breaking into such a place," Ling Han said with a laugh. "Rabbits and eagles are incompatible. Uncle Rabbits obviously has to stifle that wretch and steal all its spirit medicine. I definitely can't let it advance into shattering void tier," the large white rabbit vociferated. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Unfortunately, a heaven tier king amongst beasts can teach you how to behave with a single claw. Brat, do you know how to have a chat? Can't you say anything pleasant to hear?" the large white rabbit said grouchily. "Ah, biting your Uncle Rabbit again," Hu Niu snorted, and said, "Don't be rude to Niu's Ling Han, or else Niu will eat you. Let go. Let go." The large white rabbit only knew to scream. As they were speaking, they arrived at the promised rendezvous point. The small village was in sight, but the villagers had all become corpse soldiers, which were already killed by Ling Han and the others earlier. "Why have you guys only come now?" Yi Rong said, displeased, to everyone as he appeared. Did they know how long he waited? He was a genius that received direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy, and his time was extremely precious, yet they made him wait half a day. We encountered some things, Qin Lianyu said, and spoke about encountering the beast tide outbreak. What? Yi Rong was terrified. No wonder I saw mountains collapsing, so it was actually an eruption of a beast tide, and they were all deity transformation tier? Lady Qin, thank heavens you're all right. His eyes looked keenly at Qin Lianyu, so invasive that it was truly somewhat unbearable. Ling Han gave an "oh," and took out a spirit peach. She threw it over, and said, "Your share." Yi Rong caught it instinctively, momentarily startled, and said, "You guys actually still harvested the spirit peaches?" Truly unimaginable, being able to harvest the spirit peaches under the erupting beast tide. However, he expended a divine travel talisman, and exchanged it for one spirit peach. Even if it were a 7th-tier spirit fruit, it was still truly a great loss. They unfortunately encountered a beast tide, so getting one spirit peach was still better than getting none. Yi Rong gloomily put away the spirit peach. This was a 7th-tier spirit fruit anyhow, and obviously shouldn't be eaten randomly. It was best to save it for a cultivation bottleneck after taking the spirit fruit, insights of heaven and earth interweaved, which could lead to a breakthrough. Everyone watched and shook their heads. They all ate their spirit fruits casual, and not all people had the same fate. Why's there a rabbit? Yi Rong stared at the large white rabbit. A rabbit that could grow to such a size was undoubtedly a beast. Earlier, Qin Lianyu only said there was a beast tide eruption, but didn't mention that the beast tide was actually set off by this ruffian rabbit stealing dragon blood tyrant ginseng. With Yi Rong's discernment, he obviously couldn't see through a spiritual infant-tier beast rabbit. The ruffian rabbit revealed its true colors and yelled at Yi Rong, "What are you looking at? Uncle Rabbit'll kick your bloody face." The corner of Yi Rong's mouth twitched. A beast actually knew how to talk. This was extremely inconceivable, but even more was that this rabbit's mouth was so dirty, being able to piss people off in a matter of minutes. This beast rabbit actually knows how to talk. He suppressed his fury within and raised his head to look at Qin Lianyu for confirmation. This was hard to believe, since there certainly were beasts with intelligence no inferior to that of humans, but being able to speak was unheard of, let alone being so rascally. In the boundless world, nothing is too strange, Qin Lianyu said thusly. "Let's go, to the Restore Heaven Academy," Ling Han said. Everyone set out again. The ruffian rabbit was set on Ling Han. This human casually took out 1,000-year-old ginsengs as side dishes. His possessions should be extremely abundant, making it covet Ling Han for food. However, it would always suffer Hu Nyo's sneak attacks, and being bitten countless times, screaming became its daily routine. The strange thing was that no matter the thousands of times Hu Nyo tormented it, it would only run and never thought to counterattack, making Ling Han click his tongue in surprise. What a truly strange thing. After entering Flying Blossom County, travel-worn youngsters could be seen from time to time, and the majority hadn't reached 50 years old. Of course, 50 years old flower blossom tier and spiritual infant tier experts could also rank amongst the young. However, those surpassing 100 obviously wouldn't contend with the youngsters, as it'd make them lose face. Isn't this Yi Rong, brother Yi? Just as Ling Han and the others exited a small town, starting to hurry on the road, a group of people walked out at an slanted angle. Someone recognized Yi Rong and immediately cried out with a pleasantly surprised look. "You are..." Yi Rong slightly hesitated, he didn't recognize the other person. "I am Hu Ji," the other person hurriedly introduced himself. "A disciple of 5 Elements Valley. I once saw Brother Yi on the Chained 12 arenas. At the time, Brother Yi boldly won 12 consecutive victories and became one of the few victors since the start of the Chained 12 arenas, truly making me admire you." Yi Rong gave an "oh," and revealed a look of sudden realization. In reality, he only remembered the Chained 12 arenas, and couldn't possibly remember the figures below the stage. However, he became famous through the fight at the Chained 12 arenas, and having it brought up by the other person, he naturally felt self-satisfied and revealed a complacent look, instantly having a favorable impression towards this person. Come, I'll introduce everyone. This one is Yi Rong, Brother Yi Flying Star Sect's highly praised disciple that received direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy, who Yi introduced to his friends. Everyone instantly cried out. The Flying Star Sect and 12 arenas were all abstract to them, but the words direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy could represent everything. A boss one. A genius. Instantly, those people all circled around him. They couldn't help but reveal looks of admiration, greatly satisfying Yi Rong's vanity. He was in no rush to leave now. Qin Lian Yu couldn't help but cough, and said, "Can we get on our way?" In front of young Master Yi, "There's no place for you to speak," a person immediately reprimanded Qin Lian Yu in a rush to bootlick Yi Rong. Yi Rong instantly revealed a displeased look, and said, "This one is Dark Glory Valley's Qin Lian Yu, Lady Qin, who is my good friend. Hurry up and apologize to Lady Qin." Once that person heard, that person naturally knew that Yi Rong had interest in Qin Lian Yu, and hurriedly bowed and said, "I didn't know it was Lady Qin. I hope Lady Qin will forgive me." Qin Lian Yu sneered, and said, "Yi Rong, why don't you go with them? We sure can't claim connections with a big shot like you." She'd had enough after hearing him brag along the way. Chapter 620 A Word of Warning. Chapter 620 A Word of Warning. Reverie _ Lady Qin, why would you say that? I like you with all of my heart, do you still not know? Yi Rong hurriedly explained. Goodbye. Qin Lian Yu waved her hand and marched off. Yi Rong wanted to chase her, but a group of admirers was before him, and he'd just been ridiculed. Finding it difficult to urge her to stay, he could only wear a gloomy face. Young Master Yi, there are plenty of fish in the sea. With your identity, you can have any beauty you want, someone said. That's right, that woman's blind for not seeing young Master Yi's goodness. Maybe young Master Yi is too accommodating, making her feel self-conceited, thinking that young Master Yi must indulge her. Young Master Yi, as an experienced man, I can assure you that facing such a woman, young Master Yi only needs to treat her indifferently and intentionally pay no attention to her. After a few times, she'll lower her stance and come to you on her own accord. Correct, women shouldn't be pampered. Once pampered, they'll be on a pedestal. Hearing everyone's opinions, Yi Rong's expression was somewhat better. Anyway, in less than half a year was the Restore Heaven Academy's inauguration, and he could still see Qin Lian Yu then, so there was no rush to chase her. Hearing everyone's fulsome praises, he finally felt as if he'd returned to the Flying Star Sect, being revolved around like the moon with a myriad of stars around it. It was different than before, when he was with Ling Han and the others. They treated him like air. Damn it, they must have led Qin Lian Yu astray. Where do we go first? Qin Lian Yu asked. Not we. I am me, and you are you. Ling Han raised his fingers and said, having arrived at Flying Blossom County, we should part ways. Qin Lian Yu couldn't help but grit her teeth. How much did this guy dislike her? Why was he always thinking of chasing her off? She was someone with self-respect, and obviously wouldn't hang on to him shamelessly. She thought that this guy would definitely be able to enter the Restore Heaven Academy, and she'd settle things with him then. After Qin Lian Yu left, Ling Han had Kan Yi leave with He Lan Yun. Kan Yi was a young prospect with amazing saber talents, and following by his side, he wouldn't be able to find his own path. Once the three people left, it was just the small party of Ling Han, Hu Niu, and Zhu Shen. Of course, there was still a ruffian rabbit. Where are you guys bringing Uncle Rabbit? The large white rabbit asked. Ling Han rolled his eyes, and said, no one forced you to follow us, right? Pa, you cheated Uncle Rabbit out of his treasured ginseng, and want to profit all alone? The large white rabbit jumped up and was about to grab Ling Han, but Hu Niu bit it on the thigh, making it scream in pain again. Didn't I tell you? Come back 1 year later, I'll give you back too. Ling Han said with a smile. That dragon blood tyrant ginseng would soon produce seeds, at most a few more months, and it would be able to spread its new seeds. Then, after a year, the treasured ginseng he'd obtain would be in the hundreds. Uncle doesn't believe it. The large white rabbit screamed in pain, walking forward while dragging Hu Niu, who was biting its thigh. That was really arduous. Ling Han shrugged his shoulders, and said, do as you wish, follow us if you want. Anyhow, you're a spiritual infant tier beast, and I can't chase you off, right? So long as you know your uncle's tremendousness. The large white rabbit crossed its arms. Sadly, with Hunyo hanging on its thigh, she heavily damaged its formidable image. Ling Han referenced the map and first went to Silent Might Mountain, which could very well be the mountain range containing Boundless Mountain. Since it couldn't be confirmed, they could only search inch by inch. This was no different from fishing out a needle from the sea, because it had already been close to 10 millennia, and maybe Clear Harmony Palace Hall already collapsed, or it could have been buried by falling rocks during battles between martial artists. They searched carefully but got nowhere. The rabbit couldn't help but ask, "Boy, what are you guys searching for?" A palace that existed 10 millennia ago," Ling Han said. "Then why hasn't it been found?" the rabbit asked. "Because we can't be sure if it's this mountain." Dang. The rabbit almost fainted. "Boy, does your head have a problem? You're not sure which mountain it is, yet you've already begun searching. If you can find it this way, then Uncle Rabbit will follow your surname." Ling Han gave it a condescending look. "Do you have a surname?" "Who said I didn't?" The rabbit, pleased with itself, said, "Uncle's surname is Zong. My ancestor is Zong Qingyi, who inspired awe throughout the world, sweeping through the world with one sword strike in former years, and later broke through the void and ascended into the god realm." "Never heard before." Ling Han shook his head. "Of course, you've never heard before. Uncle's ancestor is a figure from several hundred years ago." Does this have to do with why you're able to talk?" "Boy, you're rather smart." The rabbit didn't deny it. "After a beast like me reaches the god tier, I'll transform into human and be able to speak. However, Uncle's ancestor was truly too powerful, and after blood inheritance, though Uncle can't transform, speaking isn't difficult at all. This is the nobility of bloodline." Hunyo's saliva flowed in streams as she said, "Ling Han, this is a divine beast's relic species, it's definitely tonic. Let's slaughter and eat it." "Eat your freaking uncle." The rabbit stamped its feet in a rush. "Little girl, Uncle Rabbit's begging you, stop thinking about Uncle Rabbit's flesh. There really isn't much to fill the gaps between your teeth." It had seen Hunyo's big appetite. Hunyo cracked a smile and said, "Just eat one leg, all right? You have 4 legs anyway." "To hell with that." The rabbit was almost driven mad. How could there be such a little girl? Was this forcing it to die? Ling Han laughed loudly and muttered, "If there was an ancient map, I wouldn't need to fish out a needle from the sea." "Kya, why didn't you say earlier? Uncle Rabbit knows where to get an ancient map, let alone from 10 millennia ago, even 100 millennia ago wouldn't be a problem," the rabbit suddenly said. "Oh, where?" Ling Han asked. The rabbit counted with its claws, and said, "Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, Cloud Phoenix Sect." Of course. These sects had stood for at least several millennia, and obviously had maps of different periods, and they'd make it much faster compared to him searching blindly. The key was that even if he narrowed the range, to completely search over it once would take several years. Not to mention that Clear Harmony Palace Hall could be buried underneath the ground, or within a mountain, making it more difficult to find. After entering the Restore Heaven Academy, I wonder if there's a chance to access them. Yes, wouldn't hurt to find a reason, saying that an ancient treasure map was obtained, but because the geographical features and names changed, the treasure trove's location couldn't be found, and an ancient map was needed for reference. Ling Han thought for a while and decided to go to the Restore Heaven Academy first to get acquainted with a few disciples of the ancient sects. Then, luring them with gains, he wouldn't have to worry about them not trying to go back to their sects to retrieve an ancient map. Ancient maps shouldn't be too precious. Once the idea was set, the 3 people and 1 rabbit set out towards the Restore Heaven Academy again. After 10 days, they finally arrived at 9 Dragons Mountain. Now, this area became a holy land of martial arts. The geniuses of the 4 regions and 1 state all came upon the news, and although it was still early, quite a few of Middle State's geniuses already came and gathered at the base of the mountain, sparring and improving their techniques whilst waiting for the academy to open. For martial artists, battle was a daily routine. Just as Ling Han and the others arrived, they saw 2 people fighting in the sky. Chem. Ling Han was astounded, because one of them was actually Rain Emperor. Chapter 621 Mu Rongqing. Chapter 621 Mu Rongqing. Reverie _ Rain Emperor was still as domineering as before. His fists had closely interwoven vein-like patterns, and as he punched out, fist ray intertwined, just like a crimson fury dragon. He was truly an extraordinary talent, breaking away from the confines of the title of emperor. After walking out of the desolate north, his improvement was shocking. Earlier in the dark demon forest, he had crossed into flower blossom tier not long ago, but now, he'd shockingly crossed into spiritual infant tier. After reaching the spiritual infant tier, Rain Emperor looked younger by a few years again. Before, he was a middle-aged man in the 40s, but now he only looked to be in the 30s. Spiritual infant tier experts possessed a lifespan that reached 500 years. Rain Emperor was in his 60s, and by conversion, it was only equivalent to a 100-year-old person Elbak in their teens, naturally looking young. However, the increase in lifespan couldn't be seen. Facial features and the body's regression were much slower, and would only occur during breaking through by a large tier. Ling Han nodded inwardly. Rain Emperor probably also received some amazing and favorable circumstances. Talent alone was insufficient for such progression. Rain Emperor cultivated rays, and his battle power was obviously terrifying. Who was it that was able to fight against him? Ling Han looked at Rain Emperor's opponent. It was a youngster that looked to be in his 20s, also bare-handed, with shocking brilliance enveloping his fists, fiercely exchanging blows with Rain Emperor. Peng! 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 The two battled fiercely in the sky, and each shock wave would make many people flee. Even more people cooperated to form defenses, unwilling to retreat to a further place, and watched the battle at a close distance. That's not a ray. Ling Han saw clearly that the youngster, who was exchanging blows with Rain Emperor, also had brilliance enveloped around his fists, yet it wasn't ray but many flashes of qi interwoven together. Pseudo-ray. It seemed like Shenyuan Ziguang wasn't the only one that cultivated pseudo-rays, and there were some more geniuses similar to him. Counting, the amount of qi actually reached the 20s, but exactly how many was unclear to him because the qi was tangled too closely and enveloped by that person's martial intent. It was impossible to see for outsiders. However, even with such an amount of qi, a pseudo-ray was a pseudo-ray after all, and couldn't truly rival an actual ray. Rain Emperor only condensed 10 flashes of qi into a ray, yet possessed an overwhelming advantage. However, the martial arts skills that the opponent grasped were extremely amazing, forcibly remedying the gap between qi and ray. Who's that youngster? Ling Han inquired a person on the sides. You don't even know him? That person revealed an astounded look. Ling Han laughed, and said, should I know? You must have just come, that person said with certainty. Right on point. Impressive. Ling Han laughed loudly. If you came here earlier, you absolutely wouldn't not know that gaudy person. That person pouted his mouth, indicating towards the sky. North Region's Mu Rongqing, who's been challenging geniuses of all paths in this half-month but hasn't met a single defeat to this day. The geniuses that qualified for direct entry aren't even here, or else, with Small Saber King, Yarrow Huiyu, and Dongling wouldn't any of them could take care of him easily, someone on the side interjected. However, this Mu Rongqing is certainly formidable. I'm definitely no rival for him, the first person conceded with a sigh. The expression of person that interjected changed irregularly. He obviously wasn't Mu Rongqing's rival, either, but didn't want to admit it publicly. He simply snorted, and said, cultivating a few more years than me, he's bound to be higher, or else I'd suppress him with the turn of my palm. Ling Han swept a glance at him. This person was at the flower blossom tier and looked roughly a little over 30, looking about this age judging by qi and blood as well. However, Mu Rongqing was much younger, at most 30. Who'd cultivated a few more years again? That would be him, and not Mu Rongqing. He was truly too envious. Haha, Mu Rongqing's met a rival this time, the first person said with a laugh. Ling Han looked at Rain Emperor, and said, then who's Mu Rongqing's opponent? A very low-key guy. Before he attacked, no one expected him to be so fierce, and didn't even know that he was actually a spiritual infant tier elite, the first person cried out. It seems like no one even recognizes him. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, I know him, he's known as Fist Emperor. Fist Emperor. Many people on the side heard, revealing startled expressions. How could the word emperor be used rashly? Monarch and emperor represented the extreme of martial arts. If one wasn't a shattering void-tier elite in this life, who else dared to claim the title of monarch or emperor? One as powerful as Small Saber King was only a king, with a small word before it. Fist Emperor represented the pinnacle of the fist path, and claimed that anyone who used fists wasn't his rival. Only then could one be crowned with such a title. Ling Han said unhurriedly, believe me, he'll definitely live up to that name in the future. The greatest genius of the desolate north wasn't Kan Yi, but this Rain Emperor. Comparatively, Kan Yi still lacked that assertive domineeringness, so he served under Ling Han. If it were the Rain Emperor, no matter how much help or pressure he was given, he would only be grateful and never submit. This was an emperor's domineeringness, and a characteristic that unparalleled elites had to possess. The people nearby obviously wouldn't believe it. Although spiritual infant tier experts were strong, the middle state wasn't lacking in deity transformation, heaven, and shattering void tier elites. With the suppression of 3 great level of elites, how could it be easy to claim the title of their emperor? Mu Rongqing and Rain Emperor were still fighting fiercely. Of the two, one was superior in martial arts skills, emitting azure divine light all over his body, and the other had formed Ray early on, with terrifying fist power. Even more, he had a natural sensitivity towards martial arts, and could improve during battle, becoming stronger the more he fought. After fighting for a day and a night, the situation was still at a stalemate. Eventually, the two shook hands and made up. The two were both geniuses in the way of the fist, and naturally appreciating each other's talents, they began to discuss once they descended down. Ling Han walked over with a smile, and said, Lord Rain Emperor, long time no see. Ling Han. Rain Emperor looked over, and couldn't help but laugh out loud loftily. I thought my cultivation speed was already fast enough, but compared to you, I'm immediately eclipsed. He'd just entered spiritual infant tier, yet Ling Han was already at high stage of the flower blossom tier. Although there was still the threshold of a large tier between them, he believed that for a freak like Ling Han, it wouldn't trap him for long. Ling Han was truly impressed with Rain Emperor. He could ignore the barrier of a large tier because he had experienced it before, but Rain Emperor came from the desolate north, yet relied on his own efforts and talents to break through the 2 large tiers of the flower blossom and the spiritual infant tier in the short span of 2 years. This was truly shocking. Even placed in the previous lifetime, Sword Emperor and the others wouldn't be comparable to him. Of course, this was because Rain Emperor was trapped too long in the spiritual pedestal tier, and absorbed the power of the nation for many years, only then allowing him to soar to the 9th heaven the moment he left the shallow waters. In the following days, Rain Emperor certainly wouldn't be able to maintain such high speed. Come, Mu Rong, let me introduce him to you. This man here is Ling Han. Rain Emperor grabbed Ling Han's hand and turned to look at Mu Rongqing. Flower blossom tier? Mu Rongqing revealed an astounded expression. He never wouldn't thought Rain Emperor would be cordial towards a flower blossom tier junior. So what if it's flower blossom tier, you unconvinced or what? Uncle Rabbit will kick your face bloody. Who would have expected that the rabbit was the first to flip out? Peng, with the push of both feet, it kicked Mu Rongqing's butt, and with a peng, Mu Rongqing was thrust into the mud entirely. Chapter 622, One Crisis Resolved. Chapter 622, One Crisis Resolved. Reverie _ The people nearby had strange expressions. People who were able to come here were at least at the spiritual pedestal tier, and often went to historic sites and abodes to toughen themselves, seeing plenty of strange things. However, a rabbit actually opened its mouth to speak, which still made them shockingly confused. Moreover, this rabbit was quite fierce, knocking down Mu Rongqing with a single kick. Mu Rongqing's strength was obvious to all. Xiao, Mu Rongqing jumped up, looked left and right, and said, "Who dares to assault this young master?" Seeing everyone's gazes focused on a large white rabbit, his face twitched as he cried out, "This damned rabbit knows how to talk. Mess your face up." The rabbit pushed off its feet, charging out, and began fighting with Mu Rongqing. Look at Uncle Rabbit's 18 eagle kick. Peng, 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 peng. The rabbit's speed was very fast. As it bounced repeatedly, its legs threw a flurry of kicks at Mu Rongqing. Damned rabbit. This young master has no grievances nor grudges with you. Kick your sister. Mu Rongqing said furiously. You dare insult your uncle rabbit, so who else is there to kick if not you? The rabbit bawled, kicking ceaselessly. The rabbit might be bitten by Hunyo the entire day, looking like an uncontentious person, but that was only towards Hunyo alone. When it came to treating others, it was the standard ruffian rabbit, its mouth full of rascally words, rude and unreasonable. One man and one rabbit got into a brawl, soon rising into the sky and fighting fiercely. No need to pay attention to them, Ling Han said with a smile. He perceived that Mu Rongqing had amazing martial arts talent, but he was also a silly person. It was better to let him and the ruffian rabbit fight it out and become brothers. After they've fought enough, they'll stop naturally. Zhu Xian learned Ling Han's phrase. Ling Han and Rain Emperor began talking about the things that happened in the 2 years. Rain Emperor suddenly said, I think you have no need to worry about people attacking you because of the whereabouts of the divine treasure trove. Why do you say? Ling Han appeared very curious. Wen Yi Jian came to the middle state not long ago, and went separately to Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, and the other ancient sects. Now, these sects announced jointly that no one is allowed to kill Wen Yi Jian, or else it would be making an enemy of the great sects. Presumably, Wen Yi Jian told those sects about information on the divine treasure trove and exchanged it for protection, Rain Emperor explained. Oh, so there was actually such a thing. Ling Han pondered, and had to admit Wen Yi Jian's helplessness and resolution. Wen Yi Jian didn't have the Black Tower, so not to mention encountering a shattering void tier expert, even a deity transformation tier warrior could make him have nowhere to run. For him, the divine treasure trove not only had no benefits now, but also would restrict his development. Hiding silently in the mountains and forests for his entire life, would he have any prospects to advance into the shattering void tier and become a god afterwards? Since he couldn't become a god, then wouldn't the divine treasure trove be just empty words? Contrarily, handing over the coordinates of the divine treasure trove, he not only didn't lose a thing, but also was able to discuss some terms with the great sects, receiving some benefits. If his luck was nature-defying, after entering the god realm, he could still contest for that divine treasure trove. If he didn't have the Black Tower, perhaps he could only do the same. Now that the coordinates of the divine treasure trove fell into the hands of the great sects, it wasn't important for others to seize it anymore. If you couldn't even enter the shattering void tier, could you go to the god realm to dig up treasures? Wen Yi Jian's actions actually resolved a crisis for Ling Han. Wen Yi Jian also received the qualifications for direct entry into the academy, Rain Emperor went on. Ling Han nodded. Whether it was Wen Yi Jian's own strength, or his credit for selling the whereabouts of the divine treasure trove, to win a quota for direct entry was an easy thing to do. Do you know the examination rules for entering the academy? He asked. Not sure at the moment, but since martial arts geniuses are to be picked, battle is unavoidable, Rain Emperor said indifferently, filled with assertiveness. Ling Han nodded. Rain Emperor lacked a complete art that would allow him to ultimately advance into the shattering void tier. On the path of martial arts, Rain Emperor already created his own fist technique and walked down his own path, no longer needing martial arts techniques, only mystical powers could improve his battle prowess. After talking for a while, Ling Han took out a large pot and began cooking food. As the alluring smell spread, not only did the people nearby drool inwardly, the man and the rabbit in the sky stopped fighting and descended, their eyes on the pot lid. Hunyo was fierce, jumping out to say, "Don't get any ideas about Hunyo's food." Quite the attitude on guarding her food. After the food was cooked, everyone began eating. Their group of people had formidable strength, and whether it was Ling Han, Hunyo, Rain Emperor, and Mu Rongqing, they all had the qualifications for a direct entry into the academy. Now that the four grouped together, they could even take out spiritual infant tier elites, so who would dare to provoke them? Thus, though people drooled inwardly as they watched and felt it even more strange there was a talking beast, no one came over to bother them. Mu Rongqing was silly as expected, and soon had an arm around the rabbit's shoulders as they called each other brothers. This made Hunyo mock him by saying that she was ashamed to be associated with beasts, making this guy quite gloomy. It was bustling here, with fights every day. The geniuses from all over the world were unconvinced with each other, starting to fight as they talked, because there were too many geniuses gathered. Some obviously didn't want to go, and those that had no qualifications to enter the academy also came. They set up shop nearby, selling all sorts of things. On the second day, Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing both went to the mountains and forests nearby to find beasts to battle. Maybe they could also obtain precious metals, spirit medicine, and other treasures. Otherwise, would they just sit here for half a year? Ling Han had just arrived, so he circled the surroundings enthusiastically. The outer area had large amounts of street stalls laid on the ground, laying out a good deal of items. Some were unremarkable low-level spirit medicine, some were ancient tools fished out from historical remains, and there were both usable and unusable ones. Everything was based on one's own discernment. Zhu Xian'er accompanied him by his side, while Hunyo held onto Ling Han's hand, appearing extremely impatient. When Ling Han had just taken a glance, the little girl would drag him away, making Ling Han extremely gloomy. Shopping was supposed to be women's favorite daily routine. Just look at Zhu Xian'er, she was so absorbed in it. Walking for a while, a group of people surrounding a small stall could be seen, appearing quite lively. Ling Han also pushed his way through it. Turned out everyone was interested in a bottle. This was an old thing. The tool's body was tattered, the designs on it blurred, and the bottleneck was missing a chunk, but despite it, it still gave people a grand and magnificent feeling. The stall owner was an old man with spiritual infant tear cultivation, making others not dare to seize it by force. Old senior, what treasured tool is this? Ling Han asked. Refined celestial bottle, the old man said dully. Ling Han was startled. Refined celestial? Such big talk, to actually refine a divine spirit. But no matter how it looked, this ancient item couldn't possibly have such powers. The vein-like patterns on it almost completely faded. What does it sell for? He asked again. If the price wasn't too high, it wouldn't hurt to take it as a toy. Use treasured medicine as exchange, ones that can extend life, the old man said. Although he was very powerful, he was too old, with qi and blood exhausted, evidently without more than a few years left to live. For such a person, there was nothing more precious than lifespan-extending treasured medicine. Who didn't want to live long? Lifespan-extending treasured medicine was the most precious of spirit medicine, rarely seen on the market. No wonder, then, that this many people looked, but no one struck a deal. It wasn't that everyone didn't want to make a deal, but the old man's term was too high, such that no one could offer it. Even if they did have it, would it really be worth it to exchange for a broken bottle? Chapter 623, Contesting for the Bottle. Chapter 623, Contesting for the Bottle. Reverie _ Ling Han didn't really care. He possessed the black tower that could nurture spirit medicine extremely easily, and ginseng had the effect of strengthening one's energy and extending one's life, especially thousand-year-old ginseng, its effects even more outstanding. For him, thousand-year-old ginsengs were carrots. He'd pull as many out as needed, not at all distressed. Everyone, don't fall for it. A man suddenly stood out, pointed at that bottle, and said, how could this possibly refine a divine spirit? The vein-like patterns are almost all effaced, so how much power could it possibly have remaining? Besides, how could there be a treasure in the mortal realm that refines gods? If it were truly so powerful, couldn't this person here crush Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, and more? Would they be lacking in treasured medicine? Everyone couldn't help but nod. This bottle was certainly out of the ordinary, but it was still broken. What power could it have left such that one would need to use the most precious life-extending treasured medicines to exchange for it? Who'd be willing to? Shopkeeper, make it cheaper. I've got 100 origin crystals here. How about it, trade? I've got 3 green young star pills. I'll use 5th tier azure dark gold to exchange. Everyone quoted a price that they personally could accept. This treasured tool was still quite attractive. Even though it was already broken, with the martial intent almost worn away, it still had an imperishable presence circulating, which made them moved. No exchange. The old man persisted. He had not much life left and had no descendants, so he only wanted to live a few more years. Taking other treasures had no use, they could only be buried along with him. So, how about a 300-year-old fleeceflower root? Someone quoted a price. Fleeceflower root was a fine tonic, and 300-year-old one was even more extraordinary, being able to extend lifespan by at least 10 years or so. The old man revealed an expression of hesitation. This treasured medicine was lower than his expectations, but after being constantly deprecated by that man earlier, he, too, now felt that this bottle wouldn't sell for too high of a price, making him somewhat moved. This should be a replica of refined celestial bottle. The true item couldn't possibly fall into the mortal realm, and couldn't possibly be damaged. It was still that deprecating man earlier kept observing the bottle. Although it's not genuine, and it's heavily damaged, it still has some research value. He paused shortly, and said, "Then I'll offer 2 stalks of 200-year-old dark cloud ginseng." Dark cloud ginseng was also a life-extending spirit medicine, and while 200-year-old dark cloud ginseng's life-extending effects were also around 10 years, this spirit medicine's effect couldn't be stacked. Consuming the first would have its full effects, the second would only have half the effect, and the effects of the ones after would be worse and worse. Thus, 2 dark cloud ginseng's effects would at most extend life by 15 years. However, for someone with 1 foot in the grave, living for 5 more years was an irresistible temptation. The old man's brow raised. He'd wanted to accept earlier, but now, with an offer of 5 more years to live, he was obviously more touched. Ling Han laughed, and opened up. "I'll offer 1,000-year-old white jade ginseng." Hiss. Everyone gasped in astonishment. 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng, are you kidding? Even if ginsengs were spirit medicine of longevity, 1,000 years was the limit. Basically, there were very few ginsengs that could grow to such age. It was similar to how humans had 100 years lifespan. How many mortals could live fully to 100 years? Moreover, there were so many people who wanted to eat ginseng in the world. The greater its age, the rarer it was. 100-years-old ginseng could be seen as a flower blossom tier expert, pitifully scarce. Above 500 years old was like a deity transformation tier elite, and 1,000-years-old one was like a shattering void tier countable with one's fingers. This boy called out 1,000-year-old treasured medicine from the outset. It had to be a joke. Even that old man was somewhat unbelieving, and said, "Youngster, are you serious?" Ling Han raised his hand, then threw out a ginseng, and said, "You can verify." The old man caught and examined the ginseng closely. In reality, he also didn't really know the good from the bad, but 1,000-year-old ginseng's medicinal powers were deep and could be sensed with just a small look. The old man was immediately certain that even if this wasn't 1,000 years old, it had at least 800 to 900 years of age. This was enough to extend his life more than 30 years. He was obviously exalted, and said, "All right, this bottle belongs to you." "Hold it," the deprecating man earlier spoke up, and gazed threateningly at Ling Han. He then paused momentarily before speaking. "I'll offer 3 700-years-old yellow dragon ginseng." 700-years-old yellow dragon ginseng were obviously incomparable to 1,000-years-old white jade ginseng, but with 3 stalks, it obviously surpassed the white jade ginseng. Everyone was puzzled. "Didn't you say that this bottle was tattered and worthless? Why have you taken out 3 treasured medicines to trade for it?" They immediately understood that the man earlier had intentionally deprecated it in order to decrease the competition and to win the treasured tool at the lowest price. Now, met with a powerful contender, he still wanted the treasured bottle, so he could only increase the price. For Ling Han, 1,000-years-old ginseng was of little value, but he also didn't want to waste it arbitrarily. After all, this bottle was certainly too damaged, and other than referencing the techniques of the ancient times, it almost had no use. But why was this man so aggressive, even using unscrupulous means? Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and looked towards the bottle. The bottle's body was certainly extremely damaged, and even if it could still unleash its might, it would probably break down first. However, at the bottom of the bottle was a layer of dazzling light, intense like a small sun, almost blinding his eyes. A treasure. Ling Han was stirred up inside. Those were vein-like patterns, so dazzling that even he couldn't bear it. They had to be remarkable. He no longer hesitated. Even if that bottle wasn't usable at all, the vein-like patterns alone were worth it. He threw out another 1,000-years-old ginseng, and said, "Then I'll use 2. Counting on years, 3 700-years-old yellow dragon ginsengs were above 2,000-years-old white jade ginseng, but considering that the effects of the life-extending medicine reduced progressively, then the effect of 3 yellow dragon ginsengs were completely incomparable to 2,000-years-old white jade ginsengs. Anyone could do such a calculation. The old man was obviously immediately touched, but still looked towards that man. He wanted to see whether he was going to raise the price. Anyway, he was going to sell to the highest bidder to maximize the gains. That man looked at Ling Han, and said, "I'll add another heart protection pill." Heart protection pill, an extremely precious medicinal pill that could save the lives of martial artists below the deity transformation tier no matter how heavy their injury was, and help them slowly recover from their injuries. Amongst medium-level earth-grade medicinal pills, it was also amongst the finest. The old man instantly felt a rush of excitement. With such a spirit pill, he could adventure in historic sites, and maybe seize an opportunity to advance into the deity transformation tier, seizing 200 years of life more from the heavens. This was much more powerful than any life-extending spirit medicine. Ling Han laughed. Competing with Alchemy Emperor using medicinal pills? Damn, heaven-grade medicinal pills he indeed lacked the materials to refine, but earth-grade medicinal pills he'd got a dime a dozen. He really wanted to compete. "I'll add 2 more heart protection pills," he said. Pu. Many people in the surroundings already spurted out their saliva. These 2 guys were talking about earth-grade medicinal pills, so why did they feel so cheap, like average quality goods? Chapter 624, Invitation. Chapter 624, Invitation. Reverie _ Fire was about to burst out of that man's gaze as he said, "I'm Nong Shuiyun. My great-great ancestor is the heaven-grade alchemist Nong Bo Xin. Brat, are you sure you want to contest with me?" Everyone gave an "oh." No wonder this person could take out medium-level earth-grade medicinal pills. Turned out he had a heaven-grade great ancestor. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "We're buying something now. Obviously the one who offers the higher price wins. Why are you bringing up your great ancestor? Fine. You win." Nong Shuiyun stared fiercely at Ling Han and turned to leave. Everyone couldn't help but break into hoots of laughter. This person had terrible moral character and intentionally deprecated the bottle earlier, making many people give up on the idea of contesting. Now that he couldn't win, he parted with threatening words, making a joke of himself for nothing. Ling Han smiled faintly, and threw a jade bottle towards the old man before he picked up the refined celestial bottle. The old man hurriedly opened the bottle cork and dumped out a medicinal pill to examine, but he wasn't an expert in this area. Although he saw the vein-like patterns closely interwoven on the medical pill, grand and magnificent, he was completely unaware of exactly what medicine it was. "Don't worry, I wouldn't cheat you," Ling Han said with a smile. The old man was obviously unbelieving, but firstly, the 2,000-years-old white jade ginseng already reached his expected price, and secondly, these 2 medicinal pills also seemed extremely magnificent, unlikely to be of ordinary grade, so he was obviously profiting here anyway. Anyway, even if he accepted Nong Shuiyun's offer, how would he confirm that the other party's medicinal pills were genuine? He packed up the street stall. Since he'd already achieved his objective, it was obviously better to run off so as to avoid being targeted by others. Although he was at the spiritual infant tier, his chi and blood were severely exhausted, and his battle prowess was at most 1/100th of his peak days, so in reality, he was only equivalent to a flower blossom tier expert. The youngsters here were all geniuses, and a flower blossom tier elite among them could probably defeat him, so he was obviously afraid of being robbed. Established by customary convention, everyone spent money to buy things, but if someone were really to be robbed, who would actually come forward to stand up for him? So, the earlier he left, the more assured he'd be. Ling Han smiled as he weighed the bottle in his hand and examined it closely with the eye of truth, seeing that the bottom of the bottle had a subtle difference from the body of the bottle, probably not an integral part of the structure. The bottom of the bottle was older than the rest, and it was as if someone had intentionally made the bottle over it afterwards for the sake of concealing it. Interesting, he thought. It should be taken into Black Tower and studied carefully. He put away the bottle and saw that many people were staring at him. Wealth shouldn't be revealed inadvertently. He took out 2,000-years-old ginsengs and 2 heart protection pills without a care, obviously making many people who wanted to make some ill-gotten gains have ideas about him. However, Ling Han didn't care. If anyone were to rob him, he wouldn't mind robbing them in turn till they didn't even have their underpants left. Young gentleman, my lady has sent you a written invitation, inviting you to the attend banquet at night. Just as Ling Han was about to leave, a beautiful servant girl walked over and delivered a pink invitation, which had a faint fragrance wafting from it. Ling Han didn't immediately accept, but instead asked, "Who's your lady?" "Boy, you don't even know Lady Small Peach?" Someone sneered. Lady Small Peach is Lady Yi Yun's personal servant girl. What? Lady Yi Yun? Wang family's pearl, Lady Yi Yun? Rumor has it, Lady Yi Yun is not only beautiful like a fairy, but also proficient in music, and even more so an exceptional talent of martial arts. At 9, she was recruited into the Azure Thunder sect as an exception, and although her reputation falls short of Dongling Er's, if we mention the 10 greatest beauties in the Middle State, she's definitely famous amongst them. Beautiful as a fairy, battle prowess like a goddess, an unparalleled woman, everyone exclaimed with admiration. Wang Yiyun obviously received the direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy and actually hosted a banquet nearby. How truly extravagant. The Wang family is also an influential martial arts family that has an extremely long legacy. It's said that the great ancestor of the Wang family is still alive, having heaven-tier cultivation, but it's probably impossible for them to take the last step, advancing into shattering void tier. With Wang family's financial ability, constructing a temporary palace wouldn't be something difficult. Heh, so envious. If only I could also go check out the banquet. There definitely isn't a lack of geniuses that have direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy among the invitees. But why can this guy receive an invitation? Doesn't seem like he's all that impressive, right? Everyone looked at Ling Han, unable to discover anything surprising about him. Ling Han pondered, but accepted the invitation, and said, "All right, then I'll go have a look at night." The servant girl bowed and turned to leave. Everyone hurriedly made way, treating her with great respect, which magnified Wang Yiyun's dominance. It couldn't be helped that she received direct entry qualifications from the Restore Heaven Academy, right? This qualification was equivalent to dividing people into layers. Those who received qualification were first grade, and those who didn't were second and third grade. "Boy, let Uncle Rabbit see that bottle." The rabbit suddenly became interested in that bottle. "Oh, why?" Ling Han asked thoughtlessly. "Earlier, it was that gnome whatever, and now someone's inviting you to attend a banquet. It's obviously not because they know of your strength, but because they're targeting that bottle. At the banquet, they'll definitely force you to hand it over, so Uncle Rabbit's become interested," the rabbit said. Ling Han was astounded, and said, "Your intelligence surprisingly isn't low. Of course, Uncle Rabbit's brain is unprecedented in the last 500 years and unseen in the future 500 years, of course it's tip-top." "Wait, you mean, you always thought that Uncle Rabbit was a joke?" The rabbit suddenly came to a realization. Ling Han curled his lips, and said, "You said that yourself. You dare insult your Uncle Rabbit, I'll bestow you a bloody face." The rabbit thought to sharpen its claws and pounce at Ling Han, but Hunyo bit onto its tail by surprise, making it scream in pain again. "Don't be harsh to Nyo's Ling, or else Nyo'll eat you." Hunyo looked extremely fierce. The rabbit feared no one but Hunyo, instantly keeping silent. Since there was still some time before night, Ling Han came to a remote place, and then flashed into the Black Tower. "Chem, where's that guy?" The rabbit opened wide its bright red eyes. "There, walked into the forest." Hunyo cooked up a lie casually. The rabbit was unbelieving, but Ling Han certainly disappeared without a trace. It felt extremely strange. After entering the Black Tower, Ling Han began studying the refined celestial bottle. This definitely couldn't refine celestials. Ling Han said inwardly, and resolutely, "Pa." He shattered the body of the bottle. As expected, the body of the bottle was certainly of inferior quality, at most equivalent to 4th-tier rare metals, With Ling Han's current physique and brute force, it was easily smashed into pieces. Wang, the bottom of the bottle floated into the air. Complex vein-like patterns could be seen on the face that was originally facing the inside of the bottle, and they looked like Dao flowers, making one lost in thought at first glance. "What is this thing?" Ling Han said, extremely surprised. Chapter 625, Heaven Transformation Bowl. Chapter 625, Heaven Transformation Bowl. Reverie _ Whether it was too lazy to pay attention or lost its memory and didn't know at all, the small tower didn't respond. Ling Han didn't receive a reply, but wasn't disappointed. He originally asked casually, and didn't really expect to receive an answer. He carefully studied these vein-like patterns, deliberating over the profoundness within. "I seem to somewhat understand," Ling Han said to himself. The bottom of this bottle itself was actually a spirit tool. After he poured in his divine sense, the spirit tool's mysteriousness emerged before him. That old man said this was refined celestial bottle, obviously too overblown. But the bottom of this bottle is flat on the outside and dented on the inside. In fact, it's a bowl. It has its own space internally and can absorb all things to refine, turning them into the most original essence energy. Isn't this equivalent to refining origin crystals? Ling Han was extremely surprised. He kept examining this bowl. It only looked like a tiny stone bowl. Its rim was only the size of a palm, but the inside could form an extremely large space, quite miraculous. He pulled out 5 spirit medicines and then unleashed the stone bowl. As spirit power surged within, the vein-like patterns on the bowl's body immediately lit up, and the entire stone bowl became more resplendent, emitting a powerful attraction. Those 5 spirit medicines immediately flew into the air, and they entered into the bowl. As expected, the internal part had another space. The spirit medicine was obviously larger than the stone bowl, but the stone bowl devoured it completely without difficulty. In a short while, Ling Han smelled a light fragrance that spread from within the stone bowl. Looking again, he saw that the spirit medicine was no longer within the bowl, but had turned into a drop of light green liquid, emitting a mentally refreshing fragrance. Those were 5 spirit medicines, and each one was of 5th tier, but were actually condensed into a drop of medicinal liquid. This was too ridiculous. Ling Han withdrew his origin power. The stone bowl's brilliance instantly faded, becoming extremely plain and looking like an old-fashioned ancient tableware. He turned over the stone bowl and poured it towards his own mouth. That light green liquid slowly fell, landing with a par into his mouth. Instantly, an indescribable fragrance overflowed in his mouth, making him feel as if he were about to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. However, even more surprising was the extremely pure energy that followed down his throat and entered his stomach, and then spread, circulating all over his body. "Such pure medicinal power," Ling Han exclaimed. Normally speaking, no matter whether it was spirit medicine or medicinal pills, the majority could only have the effect of accumulating origin power. However, starting from the flower blossom tier, what martial artists needed more was the comprehension of Dao. For example, at the flower blossom tier, if they wanted their Dao flower to grow, they had to engrave martial intent on it. This was nourishment. A powerful alchemist such as Ling Han could extract the heaven and earth's intent from the medicinal ingredients, and after consuming it, he could connect with the Dao, from there advancing the progression of martial arts. However, this stone bowl also had the same effect. The spiritual liquid had vein-like patterns of the Dao, extremely surprising. It's equivalent to a great alchemist. Moreover, after the 5th tier ingredients were purified, it actually reached the effects of the 6th tier. This even surpasses the effects of medicinal pills. Not only medicinal ingredients can be refined, even spirit stones and rare metals too. Even living creatures. I understand now why forebears sealed it in another spirit tool to conceal its existence. This thing is truly nature-defying, and even upsets the peace of nature. If it fell into the hands of an immoral person, refining the common people to nourish oneself, that would be too unjust. Ling Han sighed. The forebears were probably unwilling to destroy such a priceless treasure and left this pearl in the dark, sealing it within another spirit tool. Tools themselves have no distinction of good or bad, it all depends on the user's intentions, Ling Han said sternly. I definitely won't use this to plot against the world's people, or else, even if I could receive an endless stream of spiritual liquid, with my heart covered by a demonic temptation, how far would I be able to advance in martial arts? He cultivated the road of the strongest, not the heartless nor the slaughterer. Using this stone bowl to kill all living things would actually rather suit the latter too. Small tower, I think I've obtained an incredible thing, Ling Han said with a smile. Small tower surfaced, and stared at the stone bowl for a while. It said, I remember now. This should be Heaven Transformation Bowl, but it's definitely not genuine. In my blurry memories, Heaven Transformation Bowl was shattered long ago. This is a decent imitation. If you give it to me, I can extract 7 streaks of source power. Just 7 streaks. Ling Han pondered, and said, that large primal chaos rock, how much source power did you extract? 9 streaks, Small Tower said calmly. This bowl was actually not as powerful as that primal chaos rock. Wait, primal chaos rock was what Azura Demon Emperor was crazy for, and the size of that thing? This stone bowl was only so big, and 7 streaks of source power could be extracted. It was clear the quality of it was no less inferior. It was similar to comparing a chunk of divine metal that was only 1.5 kilograms, forged into a 10th tier spirit tool, and another chunk of divine metal weighing 5 kilograms but in its primitive form. Viewed from a different angle, each item's value was different. Ling Han was surprised. This stone bowl couldn't replace medicinal pills, because it could only refine the purest of energy, which was unlike medicinal pills, which had a wide variety with various uses. However, with a purifying effect that made 5th-tier medicinal ingredients possess the effects of 6th-tier ingredients, the uses were much greater. There was too much low-level spirit medicine within the Black Tower. Originally, it was without much use, but now, purifying it with the Heaven Transformation Bowl, 3rd tier became 4th tier, and 4th tier became 5th tier. The junk could be reused. Ling Han carried out a test. He pulled out large amounts of 3rd tier medicinal ingredients and absorbed them into Heaven Transformation Bowl to purify, and they soon turned into 30 drops of spiritual liquid. However, he didn't stop, and continued to activate Heaven Transformation Bowl. The spiritual liquid fused once again, purifying, and became 1 drop. He tasted it, and couldn't help but reveal a smile. This was equivalent to a 2-star origin crystal but more easy to absorb as it was directly consumed into the body. 2-star origin crystals could only be refined spiritual pedestal tier experts, and was equivalent to 5th tier treasured medicine. 3rd tier medicinal ingredients turned into 5th tier. Although pathetically small in amount, it was still a qualitative change. Ling Han was extremely pleased. Black Tower on top of Heaven Transformation Bowl was an absolute perfect match. With a flash, he exited the Black Tower. The rabbit saw it, and couldn't help but shout loudly, "Strange, how did this guy suddenly appear?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, "My Qinggong is getting more and more kick-ass." This definitely wasn't Qinggong, the rabbit was certain. With its sensing ability that was 1 large tier higher than its cultivation, if Ling Han were to leap over from afar, it definitely would be able to detect it. "It's about time, we can go to the banquet," Ling Han said with a smile. The 3 departed. They had inquired earlier, so they knew where to head now. After passing through a forest, a private manor could be seen occupying a large space, and there was actually a lake inside. It was definitely constructed recently. The walls and bricks were completely brand new. The Wang family truly spent a great deal. Their darling daughter was cultivating here, so they constructed a private manor here. Not only so, starting from the entrance was a road laid with limestone that extended for several kilometers, surrounded by forest on both sides. A carriage appeared, rushing fast. The coachman shouted harshly, "Move to the side." Chapter 626, Borrowing the Carriage. Chapter 626, Borrowing the Carriage. Reverie _ Ling Han didn't mind making way, but this coachman not only shouted at him, but actually lashed at them with a whip, appearing extremely arrogant and overbearing. And this was only a coachman. If the coachman was so unbridled and domineering, then what kind of person was the master? Ling Han frowned, and pointed out with the index finger of his right hand, showing no anger. The finger touched the whip lightly, but this spirit snake-like whip was immediately as if it had been hit where it hurt, withering all of a sudden. Impudence! The coachman, who had a chilling gaze, raised the whip, and was about to lash at them once again. Want to go a second time? Ling Han reached out, and snatched the whip that hadn't been retrieved in time, pulling forcefully. The coachman was instantly sent flying, and the terrifying origin power damaged the carriage considerably through the whip. The carriage immediately stopped, and the coachman also fell into the thicket on the sides, letting out groans. Ma Tong, why did the carriage stop? From inside the carriage, a youngster's voice sounded, somewhat displeased. Have we already arrived? Young master, we're almost there. However, a few arrogant ones blocked the road, so I tried to chase them away and was injured by one of them who attacked. The coachman, who stood up with some difficulty, made bogus accusations. The carriage opened, and a lanky man disembarked. He was quite young, looking only around 24 to 25, and had divine light wound around his entire body, appearing extremely formidable. He, who looked full of pride, swept a glance at Ling Han and the other two, and the proud look he wore became even more intense. A bunch of country bumpkins that don't even have a carriage, could you guys also possibly want to attend Fairy Yi Yun's banquet? He asked. So what if we are? Ling Han said indifferently. Letting you country bumpkins attend the banquet is absolutely humiliating me, that youngster said coldly. On top of the fact you guys harmed my coachman, if I don't act to teach you guys a lesson, then how could this acceptable? As expected, like master, like servant. If he weren't used to acting unbridled and domineering, why would that coachman attack to injure others without saying a word? Ling Han cracked a smile, and said to Zhu Xian, encountering such an arrogant person, shouldn't he need a beating? He should. Zhu Xian nodded with a smile. She obviously believed in Ling Han's strength, and to say the least, even if they encountered a shattering void tier expert, didn't they have the Black Tower? Moreover, Feng Po Yun was Ling Han's sworn brother. If Ling Han never acted unbridled and domineering with a mighty shattering void tier watching his back, how are other people qualified to? Haha, this young master is truly curious where you country bumpkins crawled out from, without a carriage to ride and looking extremely arrogant. It really upsets this young master terribly. That young man leapt off the carriage. He had a majestic gait, with a shockingly imposing presence. Don't say that this young master bullied you guys. This young master's name is Zhuo Cheng, he said loftily. Ling Han laughed, and said, should I cooperate with you and reveal an expression of awe and veneration? What, you've actually never heard of this young master's name? Zhuo Cheng was startled, and his gaze instantly turned baleful. Unforgivable, you've actually never heard this young master's name. Xiao, he dashed out and attacked Ling Han. As he reached out with his right hand, silver light bound it with closely interwoven vein-like patterns, making it look as if it had turned into a metal arm that kept enlarging, emitting a terrifying presence. In all honesty, this person's strength was truly impressive, and could be called the finest amongst the flower blossom tier. Unfortunately, he encountered Ling Han as his opponent. Ling Han casually reached out and grabbed Zhuo Cheng by the chest, forcibly lifting him up. As Zhuo Cheng still looked full of disbelief, Ling lashed out repeatedly. Pa, 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 sounds of slaps on the face could be heard. Damn, see if this bastard can't be convinced with a beating. The ruffian rabbit shouted on the side while waving his small front claws, wishing to charge up and strike violently. Ling Han turned his head, and said, Rabbit, speak more civilizedly, don't lead the kid astray. Hit him, beat this bastard to death. Hunyo also hooted. The rabbit shrugged its shoulders as if to show that Uncle Rabbit wasn't even leading the little girl astray. She had originally already been insanely violent, the teeth marks all over Uncle Rabbit's but proved it. Ling Han casually threw Zhuo Cheng to the side, and said, this guy's right. If we don't go to the banquet on a carriage, it'll feel like our status is instantly lowered by a level. Come, 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 everyone get on the carriage. Zhuo Cheng was furious beyond belief. These three people were actually going to seize his carriage? Of course their status was going to be raised. This carriage was his family's antique, a treasure passed down since several thousand years. At the time, it was Zhuala's ancestors' war chariot when they were on a world expedition. He was also frightened and puzzled. Ling Han was clearly at the flower blossom tier as he was, but why could he not even match one of Ling Han's moves? Could such a guy be the biggest genius, qualified for direct entry into the Restore Heaven Academy? But why hadn't he ever heard of him before? Under the terror and rage, he even forgot what an inconceivable thing it was for a rabbit to talk. Zhu Xian and Hu Niu gladly sat on the carriage. The rabbit wanted to get on it as well, but Ling Han threw it in front of the carriage, and the ground-burst wolf instantly barked and snapped its teeth at the rabbit. "You're freaking uncle." The rabbit hurriedly took to its heels. The ground-burst wolf chased, and the carriage was instantly pulled along, traveling swift forwards. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, but more so felt it strange. The rabbit's strength obviously far surpassed that of the ground-burst wolf, which had just entered into flower blossom tier. Emitting a little bit of coercive pressure, it could frighten the wits out of this beast wolf. However, it chose to run to amuse Hu Niu. Could the rabbit know Hu Niu's origins? Otherwise, why would this ruffian rabbit treat Hu Niu so nicely, not retaliating when hit or insulted, and simply screaming in pain when bitten? And now, it pretended to be in a tight corner to amuse Hu Niu. The pitiful Zhuo Cheng, who was tossed by Ling Han, not only dirty but also with torn clothes, had to take out and change into a new pair of clothes from a spatial ring, bawling as he changed. The carriage traveled swiftly. It wasn't too far from the private manor here, so they arrived in a short while. Ling Han tightened the reins forcefully, and that ground-burst wolf's expression became twisted, its teeth bared as it forcibly halted its movement. It was still not resigned, wanting to turn to tear with its teeth, but Hu Niu jumped out and her feet landed right on its head. It was originally in a foul mood, and now, being stepped on the head, it immediately wanted to bite this damned small human to death. However, before it opened its mouth, it felt an extremely terrifying presence, instantly making it prostrate on the ground in fright, wagging its tail ingratiatingly. This wasn't a wolf anymore. It was clearly a stupid dog. Young masters were Chiohe, for sturdy guards and an old butler were welcoming the guests, and seeing the carriage arrive, they also came over. However, when they saw Ling Han and the other two walking out the carriage, they couldn't help but feel it strange. Wasn't this Zhuo family's war chariot? Chapter 627, Bent. Chapter 627, Bent. Reverie _ Zhuo. Ling Han laughed. He invented nonsense thoughtlessly as he said, "That guy suddenly took a fancy for his coachman and decided to elope with him, so he urged me to attend the banquet in his place." The old butler was astounded. He'd seen Zhuo Cheng a few times, and each time, Zhuo Cheng would come for the lady of the house, earnestly pursuing her, so why did he suddenly take a fancy for his own coachman? Could it be that when the lady rejected him, she was too cold, which led to too great of a shock for Zhuo Cheng's, warping his view on life, bending it forcibly? "May I ask how to address this young master?" he asked. Anyway, his duty was to welcome guests, and whoever came over on this carriage would be qualified to enter the private manor. This was the rule, which he had to obey. Han Lin. Ling Han used a pseudonym again, not that he cared whether or not he'd be exposed by others. "So, it's young Master Han, please." The old butler gesticulated to proceed, and a sturdy guard immediately came over to take Ling Han and them in. "Hold it. Hold it." Zhuo Cheng and his coachman ran over together at that time. Because of being injured by Ling Han, they supported each other with an arm, looking, well, very intimate. Could it be true the two were really bent together? The old butler instinctively felt an aversive chill. He'd heard that some men swung this way, but never would have thought to personally witness it, making his old face contort. He even took a few steps back, as if afraid of being infected. After retreating to a safe distance, he asked, "Young Master Zhuo? That person seized my carriage, stop him, don't let that wild person enter. He definitely came to start trouble." Zhuo Cheng himself couldn't rival Ling Han, and could only pin his hopes on the old butler. This was a spiritual infant tier elite who'd crossed into this tier countless years ago. Although he'd been delayed in advancing into the deity transformation tier, he improved upon this tier extremely firmly, his battle prowess terrifying. The old butler gave an "oh" and placed his sight on Ling Han, revealing a baleful look. He said, "Young Master Han, are young Master's Wuqiu's words inconsistent with the facts?" Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Completely inconsistent. For a young and promising, humble and courteous person like me, how could I possibly be a wild person? I'm going to sue him for slander. Senior, please uphold the justice." This. Kuo Chou Le Cheng almost hacked out blood in anger. "You're damned humble and courteous." He pointed at the wounds on his body, and said, "Wasn't this from your beating?" The coachman also nodded hurriedly, and with an aggrieved look, he leaned into Wuqiu Le Cheng's chest, timid and helpless, appearing extremely resentful. "Fuck, this is blinding." Such a scene was something even the old butler didn't dare to look at for too long. Hurriedly casting away his glance, he said to Ling Han, "Young Master Han, rules are rules. Since young Master's Wuqiu didn't let you attend the banquet in his place, then please show your personal invitation, or else this old man can only chase young Master Han away." How could a country bumpkin receive an invitation? He definitely wanted to sneak in. Wuqiu Le Cheng discredited Ling Han. Ta, another carriage arrived, and out of it walked a man with an imposing appearance and a ravishingly beautiful girl by his side. The two didn't look like couple, but rather brother and sister. That man was first startled, and then asked curiously, "Isn't this Wuqiu?" "Haha, what do you look so miserable?" Kuo Chou Le Cheng was most afraid of having his scars exposed by others, so when he heard him, he simply snorted, and said, "Mind your own business. Don't you know that I, Li Fengyu, love the most to meddle in others' businesses and watch the fun?" The man laughed loudly. He called over the beauty to his side, and said, "Younger sister, let's get a stool and some pumpkin seeds, cracking some while we watch the show." "Brother." That beauty glared at him. Her physique was ample and touching, and she was extremely bright and beautiful. She truly had no way to handle her brother, who never appeared proper all day long. "And, Zwiller, you're holding on to this person so tightly, could there be a secret between you guys that can't bear the light of day?" Li Fengyu looked at the coachman who was timidly leaning into Wuqiu Le Cheng's chest, instantly looking full of alarm. Wuqiu Le Cheng was first startled, and then discovered that the coachman was actually leaning on his chest, instantly making him feel sick. He hurriedly pushed the other person away, appearing disgusted. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Cast aside the birdie heartlessly, how deeply deserving of disdain. So, it turns out Wuqiu actually had this sort of liking, and in order to cover it, he intentionally treated the other, coldly." "Ah, lover." Li Fengyu was surprised and startled. The old butler's throat trembled, he wanted to puke. This generation's geniuses appeared like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, each one stronger than the previous, but it was way too Mesito even play in such ways. "You guys," Wuqiu Le Cheng roared angrily. "I'll kill you guys. I'll kill you guys." Ling Han intentionally sighed, and said, with a secret exposed, "You become furious with shame." "Sigh, this isn't much, really. Each person has the right to love others, so as long as one likes it, why care about how the world views it?" Yes. Li Fengyu agreed from the bottom of his heart. Wuqiu Le Cheng trembled with anger. He wasn't at all bent, he still wanted to pursue Wang family's beloved daughter. However, if news of him muddling hopelessly with other men spread, would he still have hope? "This brother here, let's have a good chat." Li Fengyu's expression had gossip written all over it. The contents of this good chat was definitely Wuqiu Le and the coachman's unspeakable secret. Ling Han took out an invitation and handed it to the old butler whilst walking towards Li Fengyu, and said with a smile, "All right. Don't talk about it." Wuqiu Le Cheng hurriedly shouted. Ling Han turned his head, and said, "Don't talk about what?" "Don't talk about the things between me and him." Wuqiu Le Cheng immediately shouted without thinking. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Don't worry, I won't. I most dislike talking about someone's secrets behind their back." Li Fengyu instantly gave an "oh." This time it was truly certain, even Zhuo Cheng himself admitted it. The old butler wanted to puke again. No. No. After staring blankly for a while, Zhuo Cheng finally came to his senses. There wasn't anything originally, but now that he argued, he instead admitted his own status as a bent male, instantly shouting repeatedly, "Say no more, I understand." Li Fengyu nodded sternly, and said, "Zhuo, don't worry, your secret is with me, and definitely won't be told to a third person. Believe your freaking ghost. The sneaky smile on your damned face can't even be contained. Moreover, who didn't know your nickname Li Big Mouth? You damned sure won't tell a third person, but tell 300 people, even 3,000 people." Zhuo Cheng hurriedly chased over. He had to stop Li Fengyu from talking nonsense, but he just ran 2 steps when he felt his legs go soft, immediately falling towards the ground. "Young master." The coachman hurriedly threw himself at Zhuo Cheng and caught him. "Hero saves the beauty," Li Fengyu said once he saw it. Filthy, really too filthy. However, the expression on his face was beyond excitement. The trait of Li Big Mouth already began to burn with rage. The old butler couldn't bear it, and with a "wa," he puked. The youngsters nowadays were truly beyond understanding. Chapter 628, An Ugly Person with an Even Uglier Heart. Chapter 628, An Ugly Person with an Even Uglier Heart. Reverie _ Ling Han already walked past the entrance, with a sturdy man leading them towards the place of the banquet. "Brother Han, it was you just now, right?" Li Fengyu's sister was constantly watching indifferently from the side, yet suddenly spoke up. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Don't you accuse me wrongly." He certainly activated the annihilating dragon star arrow and gave Zhuo Cheng a shot. It should have been extremely covert, but she actually saw through it. Li Fengyu laughed loudly, and said, "In front of my sister, don't you think of concealing any secrets. She's naturally endowed with an extremely shocking perception." "Brother," Li Fengyu's sister said, displeased. They just met, and he already divulged her trump card. Li Fengyu coughed, and said, "Come, let me introduce you. Here is my sister Li Zizian. Sigh, she's soon to pass 20, but hasn't found a husband yet. Her standards are beyond reach, with no genius or exceptional talent to her liking, worrying this brother to death." As expected, Li Big Mouth. "Brother." Li Zizian couldn't help but blush and stomp her feet. Ling Han laughed loudly. With such an older brother, what sort of experience would it really be like? He also introduced himself. "I am Ling Han, this is my friend Zhu Xian, and this is Hu Niu. That over there is the ruffian rabbit." "Ruffian what? You in charge of who's a ruffian? Your freaking uncle are." The rabbit was immediately displeased, but being bitten on the tail by Hu Niu, it instantly screamed in pain. The Li siblings were instantly shocked. This large white rabbit actually opened its mouth to talk. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Yes, this damned rabbit knows how to talk." "Let go, Uncle Rabbit's tail that was grown out with great difficulty can't get any shorter," the rabbit screeched. "Don't be rude to Niu's Ling Han," Hu Niu chided it. "I really don't know what's so good about this guy," the rabbit muttered. The Li siblings still hadn't come back to their senses from such a shock, feeling their outlook on life collapse. There was actually a beast that knew how to talk. They actually forgot to think about the now obvious fact that Ling Han used a pseudonym. Under the sturdy man's guidance, they soon arrived at the lake, seeing long tables set up here. Food and fine wine filled the tables, yet there was not a single chair. People held plates and fetched some food from the table, walking while eating, and occasionally drinking wine. 4 martial artists, standing for a few days wasn't tiring, so it didn't matter whether there were chairs or not. Without a fixed seat, people wouldn't be displeased because someone else had a better spot. Moreover, walking while eating could make everyone communicate and converse better. Ling Han nodded inwardly. Although he hadn't met Wang family's Pearl, her remarkableness was already demonstrated. Seeing so many people, Li Fengyu's heart of gossip immediately burned fiercely as he said, "Brother Ling, Lady Zhu, sister, you guys find a place to eat, I'm going to find a few people to have a chat." Without waiting for Ling Han and the others to respond, He already dashed Uti. If he suppressed it any longer, he'd have internal injuries. Paws were Qiu Le Cheng, Ling Han said inwardly, yet secretly enjoyed it served him right for being such an unpleasant person. Eat, eat, eat. Seeing so much food, Hu Nyo's eyes instantly glowed, but after smelling it with her small nose, she couldn't help but be disappointed. It's not fragrant at all. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, it's free anyway. Can't be many good things if it's free, just eat casually. Alright, Nyo will eat casually. Hu Nyo sighed. The two came to a table and began to fill their plates, instantly frightening people on the sides. Were you guys the reincarnation of hungry ghosts, filling up such a tall plate, not afraid of bursting? Eat casually. Yes. Hearing the two eat and talk like this, the people nearby were speechless. Wang family took out a great deal this time. Many foods were made from high-level beast meat and 4th-tier and 5th-tier spirit fruits. Taking any bit of it would sell for a sky-high price. However, as these two people saw it, it didn't happen to their liking at all. More importantly, one should eat less if it wasn't to one's liking, yet they still filled up so much. After a while, Zhu Qiu Le Cheng also walked in. This time, he didn't have the coachman accompanying him. Walking alone, he'd already restored his calm, and became that arrogant genius earlier. However, everyone immediately pointed at him, discussing animatedly, and many people even wore a disdainful look. This bent man, Zhu Qiu Le Cheng, almost passed out from anger. He only arrived a little late, yet Li Fengyu had already spread his orientation to the whole place. Li big mouth, truly too big of a mouth. He forcibly composed himself and thought that rumors stopped with the intelligent. The more he argued, the more unclear it would be. A fragrant breeze could be smelled as a girl walked over. After she glanced over Zhu Xian'er's face, she spoke bitingly, "TSK, looks pretty good from afar, but this face, sigh. This great physique was really given to the wrong person." Zhu Xian'er didn't take it to heart. Her appearance was unparalleled, definitely the number one in the world, rarely seen in 10,000 years. Moreover, a girl would dress up for the man who loved her. Her beauty needed only blossom for Ling Han, and she'd never thought of letting others admire her exceptional beauty. Ling Han's gaze, however, turned cold. With his temperament for protecting those close to him, even if Zhu Xian'er was only a normal friend, he wouldn't allow her to suffer the slight of others, let alone now that the two of them were close to being a couple. Ugly girl, what did you say? Ling Han tossed a glare. You ugly girl? That girl's expression turned pale, and she immediately burst into anger. He dared to insult her as an ugly girl. She was Jing Shuang, and countless men were intoxicated by her, but now, someone actually called her ugly to her face. Not only is your face ugly, your heart is ugly too, ruined my appetite. Ling Han sighed. People said a feast for the eyes, but now, she actually ruined his appetite. So how ugly did she have to be to have such destructive power? Jing Shuang trembled in anger, feeling that Ling Han's words were truly like ice, not only cold, but cutting her painfully. She saw Zhu Xian'er's figure from behind earlier, and instantly felt put to shame and unable to compare with that beauty that was in the other's bones. She couldn't help but walk over to get a careful look. Who would have expected that Zhu Xian'er actually had an extremely ordinary face, which instantly relieved her inside, and at the same time, she couldn't help but mock her. However, she didn't faze Zhu Xian'er, and almost exploded from anger herself. Fairy Jing, what's wrong? Her escorts immediately surrounded over. There were a dozen in before their eyes. This person wanted to harass me. Jing Shuang pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han instantly shivered, and said, hey, don't disparage my tastes. Even if I had a wolf-like urge, I wouldn't take a fancy to you. You can dream on. Jing Shuang was about to pass out from anger. How could there be such a person with a tongue like a sharp blade, piercing her all over the body? Nonsense. An escort jumped out. Hurry up and kneel down to apologize to Fairy Jing, or else, I, Zhu Xiaotian, will definitely not forgive you. Chapter 629, Talk of a Marriage. Chapter 629, Talk of a Marriage. Reverie _. Ling Han smiled, and said to Hu Nyo, someone's disturbing our meal, what to do? Send them all flying, Hu Niu said fiercely. Then do you want to warm up a bit? Ling Han asked. All right. Hu Niu put down her plate. Seeing everyone eyeing them covetously, she couldn't help but ask, you guys want to rob Niu's food? On the second thought, she said with a smile, not delicious anyway, no matter. So you don't dare to act yourself, letting a little girl take the field? Zhu Xiaotian sneered. You're truly deserving of contempt. Asking for a beating, Hu Niu charged out, and as her small figure flashed, she already appeared before Zhu Xiaotian, firing a punch. Pa! It hit Zhu Xiaotian right in the face, instantly making him have a nosebleed. Once she attacked, everyone was shocked. This little girl's speed was so fast, truly surprising. Niu will knock you all down. Once Hu Niu attacked, she couldn't stop. Her body turned into lightning and flashed in the crowd, pa, 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 sending people flying one after another like scarecrows. However, it was only the time of a few breaths, yet all those dozen escorts were knocked down by Hu Niu, lying on the ground and groaning in pain. Jing Shuang's body was as if it was frozen. She definitely never expected a little girl to be so strong, instantly defeating her pursuers. Although her pursuers were definitely not limited to this amount, these were strongest ones, or else they wouldn't have qualified to be invited here. Freak! Where did this little girl come from? With such a great commotion, the others obviously saw it. Quite a few were astounded, while some others revealed an interested look. So it's young Master Han. A girl walked over gracefully, her figure lithe, swaying gently. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, her skin like white jade and black hair like a waterfall, glowing bright. She was extremely beautiful. She walked over from afar, and the people in her way made way from both sides one after another, their expressions feverish and intoxicated. She was a beauty 1 grade higher than Jing Shuang. Ling Han looked at her, and said, You are. That girl smiled faintly, and it was instantly like 100 blowers in blossom, bright and beautiful. She said, Nong Man, also the one who invited you over on Sister Yinong's behalf. Ling Han suddenly came to a realization, and said, You're Nong Shuiyun's older sister, or younger sister? Older sister, Nong Man said with a smile. I invited young Master Han over, still wanting to discuss whether or not young Master Han could give up that bottle. Hihi, a mere bottle, was it necessary to invite me here to discuss it? Ling Han said. I'm afraid that I don't have a place to eat. Lady Man is so kind to me. Nong Man involuntarily froze. She wasn't concerned for Ling Han, and only thought of using such a gathering to pressure Ling Han. She'd never expected that Ling Han would actually intentionally distort it, making her not know how to justify herself in the moment. Arrogant one, you dare take advantage of Fairy Nong. Many people instantly berated him. Each and every one was exceptional, and their powerful presences started circulating. Everyone shouting simultaneously formed a terrifying pressure. You guys dare to be mean to Niu's Ling Han? Hu Niu was instantly furious. Beat them. Beat the crap out of them. The rabbit only desired to wreak havoc, waving its small claws in instigation. Pu. Many people immediately spurted out. This beast actually opened its mouth to talk, truly shocking. The scene was somewhat chaotic. Nong Man gesticulated for everyone to quiet down, and said, Everyone keep calm. Brother Ling, I'm certainly very interested in that bottle, and if Brother Ling can sell it to me, Man will definitely not disappoint Brother Ling. Oh! Ling Han intentionally sized up Nong Man with a smile, and said, Is Nong family lacking a son-in-law? Nong Man's expression instantly turned gloomy. This youngster was truly dreaming good think of becoming Nong family's son-in-law. Impudence. Nong Shuiyun also squeezed through, then pointed angrily at Ling Han, and said, Who a heck are you, a toad wishing to eat swan meat? The people nearby laughed loudly. Nong Man was Nong family's beloved daughter, and Nong family's ancestor, Nong Bo Xin, was even a heaven-grade alchemist, being able to parallel shattering void tears. To marry Nong family's precious daughter, how outstanding would the man have to be? Oh, Nong family's precious daughter is so noble that even Ling Han can't marry her. A domineering voice could be heard as Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing arrived together. They were both spiritual infant tier experts, boasting great deterring power. The people in the surroundings instinctively made way. The people able to come here were obviously all geniuses, but there weren't many spiritual infant tier ones, and they couldn't possibly resist Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing's presence. Two great spiritual infant tier experts stood by Ling Han's side with their arms crossed, posing a supportive stance. Spiritual infant tier. Amongst the younger generation nowadays, there temporarily wasn't a freak in the deity transformation tier, so spiritual infant tier elites were undoubtedly the strongest. Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing's battle was well known, and although they had just broken into the spiritual infant tier, their battle prowess was at least 7 to 8 stars, being able to fight elites one generation older. Hehe, Lady Man, if you marry my brother Ling, I'll give the snow dragon metal I just got as a celebratory gift. Mu Rongqing said with a smile, and with a swing of the arm, he tossed out a thoroughly white-colored metal. Its size was not much different from a fist, yet it made many people stare with wide eyes, revealing avaricious looks. Snow dragon metal. It was hard to confirm its level because its uses were extremely unique. It needed to be refined and mixed with other rare metals to greatly increase the durability of a forged weapon, allowing 7th tier ingredients to endure 8th tier martial intent. The upper limit was 7th tier. It was impossible to make an 8th tier ingredient into a 9th tier. Even so, everyone couldn't help but look at it with their covetous eyes. This chunk of snow dragon metal was fist-sized, and added to a 7th tier rare metal, it was enough to refine an 8th tier weapon that most people would be satisfied with. Even Nong Man's breathing stiffened, but she revealed an irritated expression. Could she, a dignified descendant of a heaven-grade alchemist, be bought with a single piece of snow dragon metal? No way. In your dreams, she rebuked, feeling like she'd suffered great humiliation. Ling Han sighed, then patted Mu Rongqing's shoulder, and said, Mu Rong, looks like you've got no game. I'd wanted to talk of a marriage, but she turned her nose up at your betrothal gift. What, me? Mu Rongqing pointed at his own nose. He revealed a shocked look, and then immediately shook his head, and said, I don't want to. Ling Han laughed, and said, then Lady Nong, sorry. My brother isn't interested in you, so pretend I didn't say those words earlier. Was it really good to play with people like this? Nong Man's almond-shaped eyes burst with fire, and Jing Shuang's expression wasn't any better. On the other side, Zhuqiu Lecheng also requested backup, running over in an aggressive manner and surrounding Ling Han and the others. You guys have overdone it. Think you can look down on people of the world with 2 spiritual infant tier experts? Everyone looked coldly at Ling Han and the others. Amongst those invited this time, there were a few top geniuses who'd received direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy. Once they arrived, suppressing Ling Han and the others would be as easy as the turn of a palm. Wong, 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 a stream-like sound of an instrument suddenly sounded. It was as if a divine sound, and everyone's tempers suddenly subsided. Chapter 630 Wang Family's Pearl. Chapter 630 Wang Family's Pearl. Reverie _ Everyone looked towards the source of the sound, and saw that in the pavilion on the middle of the lake, a girl clad in white suddenly appeared. Her black hair was like clouds and snow, and she had a beauty without a shred of earthliness. She was playing a zither, gently fiddling with white hands like jade. Wonderful notes sounded, intoxicating people's mind and soul. This music shouldn't be of this world. The fishes in the lake constantly jumped out of the water and gathered around the pavilion in the lake, extremely lively. In the sky, large amounts of birds flew over and danced gracefully in the sky, as if fairies. The zither sounds turned into Dao symbols and entered the water, and caused slight ripples without any destructive power, making the fish joyful and the birds flutter. Everyone revealed an intoxicated look. This girl, and this music, should only exist in the heavens. How could it descend into the mortal realm? Fairy Yi Yun. What, she's Fairy Yi Yun. Truly devastatingly beautiful. She's actually not Middle State's #1 beauty. I don't believe it. I don't believe it, either. Everyone shook their heads. Wang Yiyun's appearance was above the level of Liu Yutong, but fell short of Zhu Xian'er's. On top of it, the breathtaking scene obviously infinitely increased her charisma. Zhu Xian'er was somewhat jealous, and she moved close to Ling Han's ear. She said in a low voice, "Xian'er also knows how to blow the flute." Ling Han looked at her small bright red lips, feeling his heart sway, and said, "All right, let me hear it when there's time." Zhu Xian'er nodded, pleasingly affectionate. "Everyone, please be amiable." Wang Yiyun pressed both hands gently on the zither, yet the lingering sound still reverberated. Her voice was also gentle and pleasant, airy like gentle splash of spring water. "Yes." Everyone was persuaded, nodding in agreement. Ling Han was astounded. This girl was only 23 or 24, but had already crossed into the spiritual infant tier, extremely extraordinary. As expected of a great ancient sect's disciple, her tier far surpassed those of her peers. In the North region, definitely no one could compare with her. In the other 3 regions, only a few distinguished ones like Mu Rongqing would qualify to compare. This sect and the other great sects have a prophecy that soon, a great calamity will befall. Wang Yiyun continued to talk. The entire place was silent, and only her airy voice resonated. In the recent 10 millennia, the calamity that caused great destruction on the vast lands will come again, and this sect as well as the other great sects will do as 10 millennia before greet the powerful enemies hand in hand to bring peace and order to the world. However, to prepare for the worst, the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy was still decided on to preserve the future hope as much as possible. So, everyone is the key to reinvigorating martial arts in the future, and must not harm our own. With that said, she stood up and tread on the lake, walking towards the shore. With the first step, fishes jumped out of the water playfully, and skylarks danced behind her. It was as if she was a celestial fairy who descended into the world, with beauty much calming and refined. Fairy is truly benevolent. The 5 great sects also cherish the world. If a great calamity were to truly happen, only the 5 great sects could defend the world. Great nobility and righteousness. Great virtuousness. Everyone all praised unanimously. No matter whether it was sincere or insincere, who dared to speak ill of the 5 great ancient sects? Those were super forces with shattering void tier elites. Any of those sects could dominate the world. However, the 5 great sects constantly guarded their own land, and never planned to dominate the world. This made people stick their thumbs up in praise. Wang Yiyun arrived, and smiled sweetly towards Nong Man Man as she said, "Sister Man Man, don't stay angry, okay? For the sake of my younger sister, I obviously won't get angry." Nong Man Man barely squeezed out a smile. The great truth had already been said, and if she were to cling obstinately, she'd be looked down upon by others. So, to have a way with words was also a type of sharp weapon. Being criticized at the commanding height of morality, one could only sulk and lower one's head and say that one was convinced. "Brother Ling," Wang Yiyun turned her gaze over. "I've heard you and Sister Man Man got into a conflict because of a spirit tool. How about this? I have a 6th tier treasured tool to give Brother Ling in exchange for that spirit tool." Everyone revealed shocked expression. A 6th tier spirit tool was casually used as a gift, such boldness, and it showed Wang family's deep roots. Of course, if Nong Man Man weren't a descendant of a heaven-grade alchemist, she definitely wouldn't be so generous. Nong Man Man immediately revealed a joyful look. In reality, she discovered the extraordinariness of the refined celestial bottle, but didn't want to cause a commotion, so she had Nong Shuiyun take action. In the end, Ling Han charged out midway and was richer and more imposing than they were, forcing her to invite Ling Han to the banquet and use the atmosphere here to force him to submit. With Wang family's beloved daughter speaking, and being able to receive a 6th tier spirit tool, Ling Han should agree no matter how one thought of it. After all, selling Wang Yiyun a favor could be of great use in the future. "No need. I like that bottle very much, and have no intention of selling it," Ling Han rejected immediately. No kidding, that stone bowl was Heaven Transformation Bowl's replica, which could refine all things and extract their essence, something more precious than the demon birth sword. Was it something a 6th tier spirit tool could be used to exchange for? In your dreams. He rejected so resolutely that he not only made everyone surprised, even Wang Yiyun found it unexpected. Her delicate face revealed an obvious astonished look, and being startled for a while, she finally said, "Brother Ling, are you not going to consider it a bit more?" "No need." Ling Han waved his hands, not giving her any face at all. "Ling Han, you're too arrogant." Zhuo Qiu Le Cheng took the chance to shout out. Ling Han rejected Wang Yiyun's good intentions, obviously arousing the anger of the masses. Adding a bit more fire, he could obviously turn Ling Han into the target of all. Yes, too arrogant. Fairy Yi Yun had good intentions, and you didn't even consider it at all. Mph, you really think yourself some big shot? If it weren't for the sake of Fairy Yi Yun, I'd truly want to give him a beating. Everyone all spoke at once. A beauty had the natural advantage, and the more beautiful she was, the more it made people neglect the case itself, completely influenced by emotions, gravitating towards Wang Yiyun. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Hu Niu, full yet?" "Barely, not hungry." Hu Niu popped out her head from the pile of food. "The things here aren't delicious at all. Niu's gone through great trouble." Everyone seemed to faint. If it wasn't delicious, why would you eat so much? The plates stacked on the side were taller than you. Moreover, after eating so much, you were actually just barely not hungry. What sort of stomach did you have? "All right, let's go back and continue to eat," Ling Han said with a smile. Okay. Hu Niu clapped her hands while looking at Wang Yiyun, and said in a sweet voice, "You're such a failure of a host, making such nasty dishes for guests to eat. Sigh, Niu looks down on you. All right, eating so much of someone else's high-tier beast meat and still looking down on them, this little girl was truly one of a kind." Wang Yiyun didn't lose her temper at all, still full of smiles, as if nothing could sway her emotions, but the people on the side couldn't tolerate it. "What kind of guests are you guys? Don't go, stay." "Right, I want to spar with you a bit." "That's right, fighting harms harmony, we'll just spar a little." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,